other than Coach?
That's correct.
Okay. Coach Hayes is not going to be able to be with us on the meeting today. Ben was telling me yesterday that his wife is not doing so well, so he wanted to be with her today, which is perfectly reasonable for him. So we'll keep him in our thoughts and prayers. So Ben, do you want to start with a roll call? Is that how we should start the meeting?
I think so, Mark. So I'll just go down the list right now and please say present. However, so Mr. Dunnigan,
Present.
Ms. Anderson,
Present.
Ms. Diggs,
Present.
Ford,
Present.
Mr. Heelan,
Present.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Present.
Ms. Stevenson,
Present.
Ms. Vickers,
Present.
Mr. Perry,
Present.
Ms. Parman,
Present.
Mr. McCann.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to start out and Ben, if it's okay with you, just the call to order.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. So I guess good afternoon to everyone. Due to the shelter in place order, all the members of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee are participating virtually today. So for virtual meetings, committee members will be muted until asked to be heard. And at that time, they'll be recognized and will be unmuted. When there's a vote, it'll be necessary to take a roll call for the vote, and a committee member will be recognized and will raise their hand and state their vote.
You can't see my hand raised, so what do you want me to do?
Good question. We'll have to do it without being able to see you. It'll just have to be a verbal vote, I would guess. Ben, is that okay?
That's correct. It'll be a voice vote.
Okay. Today's meeting, it is a public meeting. And so per the notice published on April 20th, 2020, the citizens can listen to the meeting if they have contacted the city manager's office to make the necessary arrangements. And a recording of the meeting today will be available by Wednesday, April 29th on the city's COVID-19 website. All right. Don't know what happened there. Did y'all hear that too? Okay. Sorry.
Yes, we did.
I think that was the end of my call to order. So Ben, do I need to tell for record the website address that the minutes will be available on, or the recording?
That's fine. That'd be good.
Okay, so that'd be www.cityofws.org/2686/COVID-19-response-fund.
Can you go over that again a little slower?
Yes, ma'am. So that'll be www.cityofws.org/COVID-19-response-fund.
Can that just be sent out?
Yes.
Yeah, just send that out.
Okay.
So the meeting is now called to order, Ben.
Okay. So you're looking at the agenda. The next item, I just wanted to provide you have an overview of the process. ground rules, kind of how the voting will be. I mean, Mark touched on that, so I'm going to just kind of repeat a couple of things he said. Meredith's going to pull up the PowerPoint here. So if we go to the next slide, slide 2, as the chair mentioned, everybody's going to be on mute until recognized by the chair. So you'll need to raise your hand. For those who are just listening or participating via phone, we'll make sure that that you're unmuted, at the moments when we're ready for discussion. And I think that's, in that case, you just have to manage it and just request to be heard, and then we'll work through that. So then, as Mark mentioned, all the voting was going to be done by roll call. And as we mentioned too, the public does have the opportunity to listen on the meeting. We do know that there are folks who are listening to the meeting right now. We go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about the legal framework about the city's fund and this part of the process, because we are using $1 million general obligation bond funding that's designated for economic development. Under General Statute 168-456, we can use those funds for community development, and more specifically to assist low to moderate income individuals, and in the situation we're in now, who are economically impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's kind of the overarching legal framework. And specifically as it relates to the agencies that you all will have reviewed and will be discussing today, the agencies have to provide a public purpose as defined under General Statute 168-209. And among the various purposes, community development is one, and that connects back up to 168-456 as far as providing assistance to low to moderate income individuals. So the agencies that you'll be reviewing, keep in mind that in terms of using city funds, public dollars, be providing a public purpose. And so that we just need to keep that in mind, and more specifically for this process, that they're assisting low moderate income individuals. I think I did provide you with copies of both of those statutes, so you have those. So we'll just keep those in mind during the discussion. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the grant awards. I received a few questions about this. Of course, how you all want to really go about distributing the funds, that's ultimately up to you. You do have the final decision in the process as far as how the money is distributed. I just want to make a point that, number one, you don't necessarily have to distribute all $1 million today. If certain applications don't meet the criteria, then and you get through all the applications that you feel are eligible and should receive funding, and we still have money left over, I mean, that is an option. The grants don't have to be, it's not an all or none decision. So they either get all of their requests or they get zero. You do have the option of awarding partial grants, and that is consistent with the review process that's been conducted up to this point with the private funds. Then on the next slide, I want to talk about voting. We mentioned this is going to be a roll call vote. We're going to go through each agency one at a time, so it will be a little tedious in that regard. There'll need to be a motion and a second, and then the vote for each grant that you plan to award. If you do have a conflict with an agency, then the committee will need to vote to excuse you from the discussion as well as the vote on the agency grant. So when we get to that point, and I know that some of you have given me the notice that you do have a conflict with a few of the agencies, but when we get to that point, the committee will need to excuse the member from the discussion and the vote, have the vote, and then at that point, the member can participate again, and we'll have the person on mute during that discussion. And let's see, and then that last bullet on voting, just that you can't award the grants until the money's exhausted, or you have grants applications that do not meet the required criteria. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this so we can focus on the discussion. But in terms of next steps, what will happen after today's meeting, we'll notify all of the agencies of the committee's decision. So both those who will be funded and those who will not be funded. Probably look to issue a press release early next week on Monday. And then we're going to move forward quickly to get the form of agreements to the agencies for them to sign. There are reporting requirements that we have that they will have to meet, in the coming months. To issue the checks in early May at the latest. And then as the last bullet says, then we are expecting the agencies to provide us with reports on the individuals that they're serving, the workload, the outcomes, various information, so we can really track the impact that the city dollars are having on these on the community. Any questions about kind of the procedure?
No, but Ben, did all 42 that we reviewed meet the legal obligations in those statutes, or were we had any decision making in that area?
So the city staff panel, we did have a city staff panel who reviewed the applications initially. And they also did the same scoring that you did, but we also looked at, the eligibility criteria. Are they a 501c, that type of thing. I think it's something for this group to consider as they discuss the applications. So when we kind of signed off on it as staff, when the staff panel voted on it, is based on strictly using the rubric that the overall process has been using. I still think it's something that you all might want to keep in mind as you discuss the applications. Are the agencies providing a public purpose? I would say that the area of community development is very broad statutes. It includes education and healthcare and a number of areas. I think the second question is: will the agencies be using the city funds to assist low and moderate income residents? I mean, I think will be something just to keep in mind.
Mr. Rowe, I had a question. This is Corey McCann.
Yes, sir.
Just in short, as we're going through each agency and when this voting takes place, the non-voting members, in the event that we have something to say about it, albeit a question and or comment, do we wait till all of the agencies are giving their votes, or are we at liberty to speak on something right then and there?
So, Mr. McCann, let me back up here. And I apologize if this wasn't made clear in my earlier communications, but all of the ad hoc members who've been appointed have been formally appointed to the committee for this process. So you all will be voting on the grant awards. The council did formally appoint the ad hoc members to the committee this past Monday. So you are voting members of the committee, so you can participate just like everybody else.
Thank you.
That appointment, excuse me, this is Brenda Diggs. That appointment is for the purposes of reviewing these grants under the $1 million only.
That's correct. The way the resolution reads is that this is a specific charge of the mayor and council. Once you all have made the decisions on the distribution of the money, then the ad hoc members would rotate off. And it would be the original 9 members who will move forward with overseeing the bond projects.
Ben, if there is a question about any of these applications or agencies that applied, should we ask that obviously before voting, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I will ask in the same term, Mr. Rowe, will we have the liberty to give a comment if necessary, as along with questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda, Ben, is to review the average scores, I believe.
Yeah, so Meredith is going to open up a spreadsheet. We'll just have to flip back and forth, between that and if we want to, view one another. But so what I've done is you all have worked very hard to send me your scores and your recommended grant awards individually. What I've done is I've compiled it into a spreadsheet and then calculated the CBOC average. You can see that's the green column on the spreadsheet. and then your average grant award, which is the blue column. And then what I've done is left open then the column where Meredith will be recording your final grant award, which you'll actually vote. So in taking the averages here, I then sorted the spreadsheet from highest to lowest average score. So if you look there, you'll see how the scoring has been calculated. And so the thinking there, and this is, I think, very similar to how the overall process has worked up to this point. But you have the high scores down to the lowest scores. The max score, as you can see, would be a 16 based on the 4-point scale that you all used. So we thought presenting the applicants this way was a good way to start the discussion.
Ben, can you share this? I don't think I have a copy of this most recent version.
Of the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have it with the CBOC average scores.
So some of you I know are calling in, and so I know that you're not able to view it. What I can do here is I'll go off here in a second and email it to you very quickly, because literally I just had it updated and compiled. So let me do that very quickly.
Are
So
you going to email it to everyone, Ben?
Yeah.
do that right now.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Anyone on the committee a member of or familiar with the Christ Rescue Temple Church?
I'm not a member, but I am very familiar with what they do.
I wasn't familiar with it at all, and I found their application. I just found their website, the application, everything fairly compelling.
Oh yeah, they are. The beauty of this process is that you really learned a lot more if you went to the various websites. Because I think the thing that interests me was who supported the organizations, who sat on their boards, who were the staff members, and even what the mix is there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that was an added value that if you did not do reviewed each grant application, you may have missed some key things.
I agree with you, Brenda. This is Daisy, but by the same token, there was some who had web addresses and I couldn't pull up any information.
Yeah, there were a couple we couldn't get into because it
Yeah.
said you would endanger,
Right.
they were not secure. So I did not go on to those, but I was happy that I went on. There was a couple of them where I found their budgets were quite large, in the millions.
Yes.
It was not listed there. So I think that's a consideration that is critical.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
I just sent the spreadsheet to the whole committee.
Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you, Ben.
We'll give everybody a minute or two to open the spreadsheet that's coming across their email. So they'll have a chance to look at this. And then we'll dive in.
Let me
It's like
grab
it came through mine.
I've got
Okay.
it.
Got it, yeah.
I have it.
Yeah, I have it as well since Reverend Ford.
I received mine as well.
I don't have it.
So while everybody is pulling that up, Meredith, would you mind scrolling to the bottom? Did you by chance sum the blue column? Could you sum the blue column?
Oh, it's $1 million.
Ben, I haven't gotten it yet.
That's amazing.
$999,756.85.
That is an unbelievable coincidence.
What's that?
Our work here is done, right?
Yeah, in the perfect world, we are done.
Well, to be honest with you, I approached it probably maybe a little differently. I mean, I didn't give everybody something. I kind of said I had a minimum score. And then after I'd gone through, I had, money left over. And then, Ben, I just kind of went back and made it add up to $1 million.
Ben, I still have not received. This is
Okay,
Dave.
I resent it, Daisy, so,
Well, let me see. Let me get out of. Go back in. Nope. I'm looking at my junk folder now, see if it went in there.
Sammy.
No. I don't know what's going on, but it hasn't.
okay.
Let me see if I can. Let me see if I have you in here.
Is it possible for any of the committee members to send it to me?
I think that's what Mark's looking to do.
Okay.
Yeah. The question is, do I have your email address? Would you mind giving it? I know you're over a public.
Mark, it's Gail. I've got it. I'll send it.
Okay.
Thank you, Gail. Yes, please.
I just want to let everybody know I did that sum function on my copy of the sheet here that Ben just sent, and it came out to a little bit over $1 million. $1 million, 4,661. So I'm wondering if there's a discrepancy here.
Mine came up to the same 999.
Really? All right. I will. I'll check this formula again, make sure it captured everything. But
Dude, I don't even, the one that Ben just sent me, I don't even see the totals on it.
You have to do it.
yeah, that's exactly right. You have to do it yourself, and that's
Okay.
what I did. And I came up with a little higher number, so I'll check my numbers.
All right, Daisy, I've sent it twice. Did you get it?
No, I don't know what's going on with my,
I came up with 999,757 as well.
Same.
Well, is out
Yeah, something's.
doing this. Yeah,
Mm.
one thing that may fix it. Hold on.
I am trying to reboot here, and I don't know why it's not coming through. But can you keep it on the screen so I can look at it as we go along, and then hopefully it'll come through? And thank you, Gail, for sending it to me. Actually, Gail, I just got yours on my phone, not on my Mac.
I sent it to AOL. I sent it to AOL. I've just tried sending it at Pure this time, not forwarding Ben. So see if that works.
Okay. All right. I got it on my iPhone, so I'm okay. I'll look at it there, but it hasn't come through on my MacBook. So thank you both. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is sort of a three-step process. We may be able to combine two of these into a single step, but the thought process here is that we would review and comment on the average score and see if there were any average scores that were way off of what everyone individually thought they should be. And then we would go and we would look at the average awards, have the same conversation, and then we would, at the end, we will go through line by line and approve the amount that the committee comes up with. So I would ask, we can do this in one of two ways, I guess. I can either ask globally in terms of the average scores, if anyone has any comments, questions, etc., or we can go line by line through the average scores and go from the top to the bottom. What is everybody's thoughts on that? Or what are everybody's thoughts on that?
I'd like to start from the top, go down.
Okay. Any opposition to that?
None.
Okay. Hearing that, we will start at the top and go to the bottom. So the looking at the scores first, Forsyth Backpack Program is the organization that ranked highest on our list. It also appears to be the one that ranked highest on the city staff scoring, which is consistent. Any comments on the backpack program?
You know, guys, I mean, this is Brian. I ranked it very high, I believe. And just again, just from my thought process, just, you know, where I was coming from was this. I mean, I put emphasis in my mind on organizations that had scale and could help people quickly.
Yeah.
You know, had been doing this for a period of time. I wasn't diminishing anyone who was trying to get their nonprofit off the ground and that it was a good or bad idea. But I just personally, I place some emphasis on, unfortunately, some larger ones, or fortunately, you know, they know what they're doing. It's not their first rodeo.
I agree with you as well.
Well, this is Gail. I also, though, felt like a lot of those larger organizations have resources. And some of these smaller organizations don't have access to boards like these larger organizations have, or affiliations with state or national organizations. And so I didn't give as much emphasis to the fact that they were large as I did to what the history of the organization was, large or small, and whether I felt like their resources were strained already to that point, or whether that this was, you know, absolutely critical, or whether they might have options for other resources.
This is Brenda, and I will also echo some of what Gail said, because many of the large organizations have a phenomenal support structure. And when you look at their board makeup and look at who supports them, a lot of the smaller organizations do work that is probably even more impactful, but they do it on much smaller dollars. And sometimes that in this scenario, to me, weighs a lot.
Mr. Dunnigan, I just wanted to say, as far as the scoring rubric, I will be absolutely transparent with you. First and foremost, you know, I really didn't, just to be honest, I really didn't do the scoring rubric or whatnot, because I just, quite frankly, didn't understand all of the nuances behind it. But I do feel like that, you know, there are other facets to consider, as the young lady just alluded to earlier. You know, for example, maybe not having a large dynamic of fiscal resources, but having impact. So even if I was able to understand the dynamic of the scoring process, I wouldn't base it solely on that. And I'm pretty sure that the group in its entirety aren't grading these organizations solely on that, but it is a big factor. But I just want to say, conclusively, I really didn't even understand it all the way. And, that's my own fault, because I should have asked for clarification. But I just wanted to put that out there. And I just hope that at the end of the day, that's, even though it's a big factor, that subsequently it's not the ultimate factor.
Corey, and I'll speak up with that, and Corey as well. The one quarter of the criteria was if there was a trusted, source within the community. And to be very honest with you, I didn't know so many of them that, I kind of just gave it. I didn't give them high or low scores because I was like, I didn't want to hurt or benefit someone when I didn't really know, if they were trusted within their community.
I think if you took a look and you saw how many people they were like interacting with, there was that question on the applications. So if somebody was interacting with thousands of people versus, 25, and you're right, like Brian, what you said, like they're going to have a greater impact with the monies that they give because they're touching more people. I also saw that there was some overlap maybe among some of the nonprofits. It seemed like maybe they were targeting similar areas. And so it was kind of hard to tell at that point as well, like who do you fund and who do you not fund? So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Relative to,
this is Reverend Ford. I just want to ask a quick question, Ben, and you may have explained this already. The blue column with the CBOC average grant award, how is that reflected in relation to these scores in terms of how the numbers were created in terms of how much to grant them?
Yes. So what I did was I calculated the average based on the scores or the recommended awards that were submitted. So in other words, if a score wasn't submitted, then that wasn't treated as if it was a 0. It was just, and so instead of dividing the scores by 12, it was divided by 11 or 10, whatever, based on the actual scores that were given. That did not want a non-score to pull the averages down, so that based on what was actually submitted.
Okay, and so I guess what I'm trying to figure out, just help me with the math. So, Precise Backpack requests $100,000. What you've got in here in the blue column is 82,222. And how does that relate to the score that they received? What's the formula there for reaching that number in terms of the recommended award?
So, Reverend Ford, it's really 2 separate scorings. We've asked the CBOC to score the applications based on those 4 criteria and the 4-point scale, and then separately have you all then provide what you individually would recommend as the award for that agency. So in some cases, I think some members noted the full request, $100,000, but in order for that average amount to be 82, it means that somebody had recommended something less than what they had requested.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
But it doesn't mean in that blue column, for example, if there is enough support and concrete evidence that Precise Backpack program should get more than that, it does not prohibit. I mean, that number is not etched in stone. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's just simply to give the committee a start.
If we wanted them to have 100,000 as a committee based on things that some of us may know, going back to the point that, the committee is diverse. Some of us will have a lot more knowledge about some of these organizations, particularly some that are church-based and the work that they do. So that's the value of the committee, which would then in turn transfer.
Here's what so a few things. So one is that I was also late to the scoring rubric process. I didn't get access until about 2 hours before the meeting, and I think that was just partially about the login process and partially about my own workload. But I did get to at least skim every application. I like the Foresight Backpack program, and I like the application. The main challenge I had was about the timing and about whether or not others are providing similar services. So for instance, during the what I'll call virtual school year, what I understand is that the school system has been working to continue to provide lunches and meals for students. And so for me, the big question is what happens if we're still under some type of COVID isolation requirement once the virtual school year is out. What will be the provision that the school system will provide? And if the school system isn't providing anything, And if, as their application says, they're not able to continue to raise funds in the way that they traditionally would, then it seems to me that they are they play an incredibly important role. And that, interestingly enough, that role isn't so much one that starts at this moment or exists so strongly at this moment because presumably the school system is continuing to fill the void, but it actually would start once the virtual school day ends. And so I think the biggest challenge that I had with trying to figure out how high of or how low of a score to provide them is really about what other resources are out there in the community, and how many other organizations, government or nonprofit, are working to fill the need. I just also happen to know that, you know, when you look at SG Atkins or Love Out Loud's application, and then when you think about a few other groups, that they're all food based, and so it did bring me to this point of wondering about the timing of the resources, about you know, are we spreading the resources too thin, and just about who else plays a role in making sure that all the needs are being met.
And you're right. There's actually more on that list that are food based than just the three that you mentioned, 3 or 4 you mentioned.
Obviously,
and many are feeding different age groups. I would say, you know, so we know the backpack program obviously is focused on children that are in school, K through 12 school, but there are also other programs that are focused on that same age group. And I don't know that I do know that I'm not smart enough to know what they're all doing and how they overlap and where they overlap. I'm not sure if anyone else on the call is or not, but it's an excellent point. You know, are we duplicating efforts?
Right.
And this is Daisy. I think we have to keep in mind that the need is so great at this time and beyond this time, that even for the backpack program, especially because I know a lot about it, they're working with the school system, the child nutrition department. So once these schools are not open, they're going to continue. How that looks, I don't know at this time, but that's what I was told when I called and asked, what are you going to do? But the need is going to be even greater once the school sites, if they don't remain open, it's going to be really, really necessary to have a lot of these similar agencies doing a lot of that frontline work.
No, I think I completely agree. I think my point was, one of my core points was just that I think, and you know, obviously I'm someone who runs a nonprofit, so I appreciate how brief the questions are, but I think one of the challenges around brevity is that we don't get a sense of what they think the right timing is. And, you know, I think, for instance, that one of Brenda Diggs' points about, you know, if you were able to take the time to click on the website and go through the website and see what their capacity was, then it really helped to influence your opinions. And that some of that additional information is information that you have to either glean from relationships or through other investigation, but not through the website, through the applications themselves, rather.
Can I make 2 points? This is Melissa. The first point is, you know, something that I just didn't consider is the loss of jobs from these parents is going to lead to more food insecurity as far as kids are concerned. So I think the impact is going to be great as time moves forward. And secondly, one thing about the Forsyth Backpack Program is they have pretty good marketing, and I know that they do work with like WFDD. So they get out in front of a lot of people, at least like if people, the majority of the people who are listening to WFDD who tend to give. So I know that they're pretty well funded. It looks like they're pretty well funded. And yeah, just that the listeners of WFDD tend to donate to WFDD and then they end up filling a backpack as well. Where I don't know how that works with some of the other organizations. They may not have quite that marketing capacity to get out in front of a lot of people, but the need is going to be great. And they're doing, I mean, they do amazing work. So I'm just at points up for discussion.
overall, I placed food as a fairly important thing to make sure everyone in Forsyth County has access to, because I think loss of jobs during COVID is going to create a lot of food insecurity. You know, I mean, food, safety, housing, you know, counseling, it's all, you know, they're all very, very important, but I kind of figure we can't have too much food floating around out there.
No.
Well, I think all these are great points and things we definitely need to consider in all of this, but in order to get through this list, I think we're going to need to sort of go through each one.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
we're gonna need another day the way we're going.
I know. What I think we need to do is go through item by item, and if anybody has something that they believe is where maybe they placed significantly less emphasis or significantly more emphasis on a particular organization, let's hear it as we go through it,
Okay.
and we'll go back and decide whether the dollar amounts align with what we're talking about.
Mhm.
We'll vote at the end, but I do think we need to click through them, because we can sort of opine on this for a long time, and they're all excellent points. So let's start with for some backpack program. Does anybody put significantly less emphasis on this than what the sheet shows?
No.
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 Okay. How about St. Peter's We Care House?
No.
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 Yeah, I tell you what, I'm sorry, but they're requesting 49,700, and their operating budget is only 23,000. I just wondered about their ability to come in and manage a sum that is so much larger than their typical operating budget.
That's a good point.
They have a superior team. They have been in this business for a long, long time. So based on my knowledge, I have no concerns about managing.
So let's see, Meredith, is it possible to highlight that 44,803 recommended award and just highlight it in yellow? And we'll know that we need to come back, and as we're going through the amounts, we just need to look at that one more time. How about Grace Presbyterian Church?
This is Mabel. I'm a member of Grace Presbyterian, and unfortunately, there were several agencies that I was unable to pull up, so I don't know what they offered. I mean, what they asked for. I didn't see their proposal.
The request from Grace was $45,320.
But I'm just letting you know that I'm a member. You asked about that.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, and that's a great point, Mabel. Thank you for making that. If we go through these and there are conflicts, let us know. Put a little asterisk out to the side, or name out to the side, like Meredith's doing there. So we'll know when we get to the voting that we'll need to recuse you from that particular organization's voting.
Okay.
Anyone put any more or less emphasis on Grace Presbyterian?
No.
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 Okay. Christ Rescue. Christ Rescue Temple Church. I know there was some conversation about them at the beginning. Positive conversation.
It was positive, but I'll go back to James' point again. I just thought it was very compelling, you know, their website, what they do, their application. But again, it's so much more money than they seem to have ever had to manage. But I felt comfortable telling them, hey guys, here, let's do it. You guys seem like the right people, and let's do it.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I agree as well.
I do too.
So
Several
James,
agents- Several of the proposals said we're going to add staff and increase what they were doing. So their budget may have been lower than what they were requesting at this time.
Mhm. Right.
James, and I know there are others that have been in management positions with nonprofit organizations in the past.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on, I think getting a grant amount that is significantly larger than your annual operating budget certainly can be challenging for any organization. What's the back end of that look like? Let's say you get the grant, you do the work that the grant is intending for you to do, and then what does page 2 look like for that organization?
Yeah, well, there are a few things. So one is I think that it's a lot easier, and even though this is a streamlined process, managing any kind of government or city funds tends to be a lot more difficult than private funds because obviously it's a taxpayer dollar, and so just the basic reporting mechanisms tend to be a bit more complex. You generally have to be able to demonstrate that you have a solid accounting process in place, and this respectfully, this is a town with a lot of bankers, and folks do like to see that you have properly managed your money. And if your budget is very small, then you may not meet the criteria to have to do the kind of accounting due diligence that you have to do once you get to the $50,000 and $100,000 level. And I think that's the main part of my concern. I think the other thing is if they end up having to hire any staff, if you've not had to pay staffing before, that it's hard to estimate it the first few times that you do it because you don't realize all the overhead and so forth that goes along with paying staffing and so forth. So
just be back on what James Perry is saying. I do think there is a question that would have to be asked around the bookkeeping and accounting for this with whatever the city's requirements are. I think it's entirely feasible to just simply bring that up or even make that contingent when they're talking about hiring new staff. That part of that be, on some sort of bookkeeping, unless they can demonstrate through either the church directly itself or some other means that they have an adequate, person or means of doing the bookkeeping to make sure that all this money is accounted for appropriately.
And I can kind of, in my mind at least, I can envision if this was a for-profit company and all of a sudden your revenue went up by a factor of 2 or 3 or 4 from what it normally might be. You hire up to do the work and you lose focus on fundraising, right? Because you're completely focused on getting the work done and not so much what does next year look like. So 2021 or 2022 comes around and all of a sudden you're laying staff off, right? Because you don't have any work for them to do because this grant's gone. And you also don't have your normal operating budget raised. Is that something that you could foresee as well?
Yeah, I think that's I'm less concerned circumstance. I mean, I think I certainly am concerned about the health of these organizations, but in this circumstance, I really am just thinking about the end of this process when it is time for reporting about outcomes, and that it seems to me there are going to be 2 distinct things that will be considered. One will be whether or not the programming achieved the goals that they that each nonprofit set out to achieve. But the other one was whether or not they were a good steward of the funding. And the burden for evaluating whether or not you've been a good steward of money that you've received is just always higher when it's federal money. And I find that to be true both on the for-profit side and on the nonprofit side. And so, I don't know at this early stage, certainly in my role assisting this committee, what the burden is going to be. But I do know that there's going to be some level of reporting. The Urban League, having received a fair amount of funding from the city, I know that we have to do a hefty amount of reporting and to clearly demonstrate how we have how we've honestly administered our funding. And I just want to make sure that we're not putting these organizations in a position where they do a great job, but then they can't demonstrate it on the accounting side. So it doesn't mean that we don't award them. I think to Reverend Ford's point, it may simply mean that we have to either set up some type of conversation with them, or that we have to set up a requirement that they do so. I've also seen, especially on the private philanthropic side, when folks fund a small agency and provided a lot of money, that they bring in an outside bookkeeper just to handle the finances for them, because they're not up to speed on how to manage nonprofit accounting. So I think any of those are options. So I think that they and a number of other organizations who are in this circumstance have really fine proposals, and but it may be incumbent upon us to provide the assistance, or to say that we set aside $30,000 so that there can be an outside accounting firm that is assisting folks or something like that. I'm not sure what the case may be, but I just want to make sure that when it's all said and done, that folks haven't done a great job on their programming, but then we're getting a ton of bad press because of some aspect of how they've written a check, or because of their bad financial protocols.
Understood.
As the ex-banker in the group, I do have to say that church-based organizations like this are reviewed with a slightly different lens than what Urban League would be, because of staffing and the requirements. So yes, we do need to have some requirements and accountability, but it's not normally in the church world. The financial bankers tend to know that there is a difference.
Okay. Why don't we, Meredith, if you don't mind highlighting that cell as well, next to Christ Rescue Temple Church, and I just want to make sure that we're keeping the record of these as we go through. Any more conversation on Christ Rescue Temple? Okay. Diaper Bank, North Carolina.
No issue.
No issue.
No.
Yeah, and I would just.
Sure, I voted 25,000 for him. I can't imagine being a mother and not being able to put a diaper on my kid.
I'm with you, Brian.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
I'm a big fan of this organization. I think they do incredible work, and the diaper bank concept is just a very small part of what they do, and it's so much more expansive than that. And I think that this investment in this organization goes a long way in the needs that we'll see during the COVID-19 crisis.
You need 25,000.
I was gonna say, can we highlight that one? I think they deserve the full amount.
Agreed.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Why don't we, let's highlight that one too, Meredith. Thank you. We'll come back when we put them in the orange column here at the end. We'll look at that amount. St. Paul's United Methodist.
No issue.
No issue.
No issue.
They do a fantastic job.
They do.
Agreed.
Okay. Love Out Loud.
I have a conflict on that one.
In reading all the different applications and websites, I was impressed by how many people partner with Love Out Loud.
Yeah, of all of the ones I reviewed on this list, I didn't know Love Out Loud, and I was most impressed with Love Out Loud.
Love Out Loud is a major facilitator of direct service work and these kind of partnerships in the city. Our church has been one of the churches that has participated in this partnership that they are a part of relative to distributing food in the community during COVID-19. I know Chuck Spong well. This is a very credible organization doing tremendous work.
They do a great job. They've been doing it for quite a while too, so I have no issue with.
I'd like to flag that amount too and just see at the end if we have any more money.
And the only thing I'd add is just that, and this is a segue into the next application. I'm not a big fan of funders requiring organizations to work together, but I do think that there's a lot of synergy between Love Out Loud and SG Atkins, and it would be, I'd love to see if they would end up working together. I don't think we should require it, but it certainly would be really great if they ended up being able to. And I know that they've already been in partnership, but it would be great to see these funds go exponentially farther because of a partnership, a further partnership between those two organizations.
I would second that.
Mr. Dunnigan, I had a question about the conflict portion, just going to the left a little bit. If we do, I guess, for lack of a better term, have a conflict, I didn't know if you meant that in regards to, something that we just, don't agree with, or if we have a close affiliation with them. Let me ask that first. What do you mean in terms of conflict? Is that like conflict of interest because we know them personally, or there's something that we, have a conflict against? In that regard, I'm going to ask
Yeah,
that
I think
first.
Ben can answer that question.
Yeah, Ben, is the city attorney on the phone with us?
I don't believe she is. But I think that, both the legal conflict and the appearance that has to be considered. And so, whether you're a member of the board of directors of the organization or an employee of the organization, I mean, I think that part of the standard is, will the CBOC member benefit financially from the decision that's made? I would say that, our position is that the appearance is as important as legal conflict of interest.
Okay. So then that just brings me to my next question. Then, if we are strongly familiar with an organization, but have no financial ties, no employment or anything in that regard, we just simply are very, very familiar with their work. Do we have the liberty to still, have that vote and speak on them?
I mean, I would say that if you're not, a member of the board of directors or an employee, then I would say that, yeah, if you're just familiar with the organization, then I wouldn't say that there's a conflict there.
And I might expand that to your families too. Now, I mean, if somebody's wife is on the board or, something like that,
Again, the appearance test, I think, is
right.
Here.
Love Out Loud in their partnership list are many churches. I'm a member of one of the churches, so that's not a conflict. They just listed as a partner, but I am on the board for Winston-Salem Industries for Blind. That is a conflict.
Correct.
Yes. Right.
So again, just in simplified terms, if I'm not on a board, but I'm just familiar with an organization, then that is still a conflict or not?
It's not, Corey. Corey, listen, it's straightforward. If you're not a member of the board of directors for the organization and you're not employed by the organization, then it's not a conflict of interest. Now, to Mr. Rowe's point about the appearance, I'll use this example, and it's similar to what Mr. Stevenson brought up earlier. When we get down to Share Winston-Salem, the gentleman who submitted that application is a member of my church. That's an appearance of a conflict of interest, so I step aside on the consideration of Share Winston-Salem. But to Mr. Degg's point, just because you're a part of even an organization that partners with the organization, right, that doesn't create a conflict of interest. So it really is just about being on the board, being an employee, maybe having a member of your church who is actually, running that organization, submitting the form. I think those are the sorts of things that we're trying to be careful about. Am I fair representation, Ben, about that?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Reverend Ford.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Moving on to SG Atkins CDC.
No problem.
No problem.
No problem. No problem.
See SG Atkins CDC get the full amount if we can do that. They're talking about employing people to prepare this food, you know, who are otherwise not able to work right now in order to partner with the type of things they've been doing with Love Out Loud. So I'd like to see them get the full amount if we can manage that later on.
The 35,000?
No, I think
50.
yeah, 50.
Okay,
Give them
yeah.
full 50. That's what I'd like to see.
I think that's a reasonable request too. So
I do
yeah, I have
too.
no objection to that.
I have a question.
Yes.
So are we giving them the whole 50,000 that they requested, even though they are collaborating with other?
Well, we haven't yet agreed to give them the full 50, but if we did, we would give them the full $50,000 or whatever amount that we're going to give them in conformance with their proposal. So yes.
Can we go back to?
Because I feel like now we double dipping. You're double dipping in the same. If you have money and I have money, and we're all doing the same thing and we're working together, why are you paying them the same amount that they're requesting? They're collaborating with other nonprofits that's on the same list.
Well, you have several like that on this.
Right, that's what I'm asking. So do we give them the full amount or are we giving them partial amount? Not just this organization. I've been muted, y'all. I'm sorry. My computer wasn't acting right, so I couldn't comment on nothing. So I'm like 5 people behind. I'm so sorry, but I had to get that out because that was sitting in. That and the fact that we are aware that we have 40% increase during this COVID-19 for SNAP benefits for people who receive SNAP. Are we aware of that?
TT, I think that was, and I hear you, and I think not just for this committee, but for private and public philanthropic entities across the city, we've been dealing with the same issue that, there's a lot of organizations who do some of the same work or do similar work, and it's tough to decide do you fund folks, do you fund both organizations or do you force them to collaborate? And then when groups do collaborate, can you tell whether or not they have considered that collaboration when they've made their funding request, or do you penalize them based on that collaboration? And I certainly, and I think everyone has to make their own decision about how they look at this. But what I've presumed is that people have taken a look at their collaborations and what all the groups that they're working with bring to the table, and then figured out what cash they need regardless of those collaborations, and then they've asked for that cash. So for instance, if I'm an organization and I'm providing food, but I have 10 other partners who will do distribution, then I'm not asking for money for the distribution, but I am asking for money for the food. And so I think we're not inside of the organization enough to know whether or not they're taking that approach. But I'm just assuming the best of everyone and assuming that they're taking that approach. I think I think another nuance that was in your question or in your point, it's similar to what I raised about the backpack program and about this issue of them providing food for kids, and particularly that they'd be providing food for kids during the summer, and that there are other organizations here who are going to be doing some of that same work. Daisy, I think it was Daisy's point that really resonated with me, which was that, the amount of money that we provide to all these organizations is going to be a drop in the bucket compared to the total need for food for low-income kids in the city of Winston-Salem. So even if we funded all of them, and if they worked together or didn't work together, it still wouldn't be enough to provide enough food for all the kids in the city. So, we're not harming anything necessarily by funding them. Should we urge them to collaborate as much as possible? Sure, but in the end, it's gonna, different groups will have different connections to help different pockets of the city, and hopefully we can extend the reach more than anything else.
But I don't think we as a committee have the responsibility nor have the right to ask them to collaborate. I think that's not our charge.
No, I'm not asking anybody to collaborate. I went through.
I know
this
you were not TT, but I'm saying we've talked about, ideally, it would be nice to have some to collaborate, but that is not what we're about. And, you know, that's an age-old issue we have in this community with a number of our nonprofits. So I just don't want us to get sidetracked on that thing, because we can't, our charge is not to even deal with that piece.
Right, and I understand that. What I'm saying is, all week I spent my week overviewing every last one of these applications. I even reached out to quite a few of the nonprofits to see what their intentions were, because you can read anything on the application, but I need to know what your nonprofit does as it relates to these communities, because these are tax people's dollars. If you're talking about you're paying rent, how are they going to pay their rent? What are they going to have to be qualified to have to do? And how do we as how does the city hold them accountable for the dollars that they're finna even give them, other than them to do a report? You see what I'm saying? Because if I give somebody $25,000 of everybody else's tax dollars, they should be held accountable for making sure that they can produce something that's $25,000 worth between May 1st and October.
Well, I think that the city does have that in place. Is that not true, then?
The form of agreement that we are working on does have report requirements. So the agencies that you all award funding will have to provide monthly reports. We're probably looking at a 6-month term. So even if they use their funds for a lot of one-time needs to help increase their capacity, they will still have to report to us over the next several months to show how those dollars impacted the community and reached these target populations. So it'll be both financial reports showing how they spent the money and what they spent it on, but also progress reports that show here, are the demographics of the populations that we served. Here's the workload that we saw with that we served with the funds and that we achieved.
I want to just cut to the chase with one or two things here, right? If somebody feels like they have concerns about the credibility of a particular organization, either based on their knowledge of that organization directly or personally, or some conversation they have with somebody in that organization, or the strength or weakness, relatively speaking, of the application, you just need to put that on the table, right? Because we know that in this stack, there were unfortunately a few applications that left some stuff to be desired. They had web addresses that didn't work. They had very scant sort of narrative in their applications. And that unfortunately does speak to the credibility of the organization. We're not talking about those examples right now with these first handful that we've been discussing. And so I do think with what Ben said about the city's process and the memorandum of understanding, so to speak, that's going to be in line there for reporting, that being in place is a safeguard. We need to give these organizations the benefit of the doubt. Unless somebody's prepared to make a case, I don't think this organization is credible for A, B, C, and D reason. And then we just need to hash that out.
I agree with Paul completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'll be transparent. I didn't give everybody money. I mean, I had plenty of zeros on my spreadsheet.
Yep. So did I.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Any more conversation on that or on SGI and CDC? Okay. How about the Exchange Club Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse?
No problem.
No objection.
No objection.
This was one for me. I did rank them a fair amount lower than what the average is. And the only reason I did that was because I felt like they weren't directly providing the services in all cases. And I may have that wrong, but that's why I ranked them a little bit lower.
That was my question about them. I couldn't tell from the application. It seemed like they weren't really providing direct services, but I couldn't determine that.
anyone know of them on a personal basis?
Never heard of it.
Okay. Well, I will be the.
Only addressing 170 families, which I thought was a rather low number for a budget as large as they had.
Yeah, they do have a big budget.
So I don't know. I'm not saying anything. I've just had a lot of questions about that one that I couldn't get answers to.
I do believe in the increase of domestic violence we're going to see from loss of jobs and staying at home.
We've already seen that. They've already been reporting an uptick in that.
Yeah.
Family services has been raising that concern. So that's already an issue.
That's right. I agree. It's already happening.
And if you look at their contributors, I'm on their website right now, like Brenner's is a contributor,
Right.
Haynes, Reynolds. So I think like there's probably some legitimacy if some of these large corporations and Brenner's Hospital are providing some kind of financial aid, Modern Automotive, just throwing that out there.
I was impressed by that as well.
And I'm okay with them. If everybody else is comfortable
Yeah.
with where they are, I'm fine with it. I just wanted to.
Been around for a long, long time.
Exactly.
Been
Yeah.
around a long time.
Okay.
Same
Uh,
location.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My only thought is about whether or not, particularly since they have such a large budget, whether, and we've had a lot of talk about, a few highlighted organizations where we want to increase the amount beyond the average grant award, whether or not we want to reconsider the 52,000 average amount, whether or not we want to come down on the amount sum since we don't have clarity on how they'll spend the money and since they already have a very large budget. I mean, 65,000 or 52,000 would be a pretty small percentage bump in their annual budget, and so it won't make a huge difference in the amount of services that they'll provide. If we came down some on their award amount, then it would, the remaining money would make a big difference to some of these other organizations with smaller budgets.
Okay. Let's highlight that one as well, then, Meredith, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would agree with James Perry on that.
School Health Alliance for Forsyth County.
My question on this one is, it says they're affiliated with the school system, but I didn't quite understand if they're like a part of the school system or just working with the school system, if anybody knows the answer to that.
I do not.
No, I don't either.
And my question, similarly was because they talk about so many different roles that they play. They talk about health and nutrition. I was trying to tell whether or not they're also providing meals. Since they're not so specific about it, I gathered that they don't. But I just wanted to know if anyone had any clarity about it, just because of the there'd be overlap with the Forsyth backpack program, which wouldn't make me not support them, but I'd just be curious.
It says the monies will be used to support general operations and then also to expand SHA services to children served by the Imprints Cares child care programs. So that's not super.
It says it's a partner and supporting organization to the school system. So that's what raised the question in my mind of, well, where and they serve at school-based sites. So I didn't know what partner and supporting organization actually meant.
Well, I didn't like supporting general operations.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
I didn't see that, and that's a big deal for me.
Yeah.
That really harms my support.
And they're asking for a really large amount, considering.
A really large amount.
The most amount. Yeah.
All I'm saying, I didn't vote for 68,000. That could be yellow. But if we don't get down to the bottom where some people are going to get zero, everything's going to be yellow.
I still think we should look at that. I hate it because
That's too much.
Yeah.
To me,
I agree.
that's too much.
I agree.
Agreed.
I just don't want to fund them for general operating support.
I agree.
I don't
Exactly.
fund them for that, and I sure don't want to give them that much.
Okay. Anything else on the school health?
No.
Okay. Great Commission Community Church.
Does anybody know them? I know nothing.
No, you know who this is, Gloria Samuels.
Oh,
And she's also on the board of Love Out Loud.
Oh,
That's what you reach when you do the background.
that's good.
I have no problem with that, with the amount.
Neither do I. No
Yeah.
problem.
I mean, they do good work.
I had no problem with them. I just didn't know them.
Yeah, that's Gloria Samuels.
Okay. Mental Health Association of Forsyth County.
Yes, we need mental health now.
Yes.
That's an absolute yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, can we stop for a
I
minute?
agree.
This TT department, I got one question, and I probably should have said something before we moved on. If we said at the top that 49,700 was in the yellow at St. Peter's We Care House, how do we give Great Commission Community Church, whose is 5,000,
Yeah.
that much money without them being in the yellow? That is just me asking questions.
That's a
You
good
can't
question.
do one without doing the other one. Now we're gonna be fair and very transparent about this. It don't matter who organization it is.
See, you're on point.
Agreed.
I agree.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
This,
So Great Commission Church, Great Commission Community Church, their operating budget is $5,000. Their request is 40,000, and we said 28,889 and kept going. But up here at St. Peter's We Care House, which is St. Peter's World Outreach Center, who is pretty much a business, is 23,000, and we put them in the yellow for asking for 49,700.
because my rationale was they have been in business doing this in a very quiet way for a long, long time, much longer than Greater Commission. So that was my rationale for knowing both entities. They both are worthy of money, but I would give more money to St. Peter's because their outreach is broader.
I'll be honest with you. When I saw this operating budget of $5,000, I just viewed it as a
Right.
mistake. I viewed it as a mistake. How can a church operate on $5,000 a year?
I think it's for what they're
$2
talking
a week?
about doing. No,
I
I
think
think
it's their outreach that pays out
it's their
that much.
outreach budget. I don't think it's their total budget from what I could figure out.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But
I
either.
think it's
now,
their
come on.
outreach budget. But even if your outreach budget is 5,000, you just multiplied it times 8.
Yeah.
I can see 10,000, giving them 10, 15,000. Okay. But
They have a lot of partnership. Their website speaks
right,
to
they have a lot of partnerships as
And they-
well.
funding for projects that they have done. They've been very collaborative in what they've done. I
Right,
know
and you just said that they're a part of, she sits on the board of Love Out Loud as well. And
I still feel that they deserve.
okay,
Why don't we highlight that one? Because that'll be 3 of them. I do think we do need to treat everybody the same when it comes to our analysis. We can agree to leave it there at the end, but let's leave that highlighted for the time being so we touch it one more time.
Gonna get.
We're on mental health. We went through that. CareNet.
Mr. Chair, this is Daisy. I need to be excused from this because I'm on their board.
Okay.
I had a question because 20,000 of what they requested was for staff. And I wasn't really clear what that staff was exactly going to do. I wasn't clear. Let me look at my notes. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, they wanted 20,000 for general operations,
Yeah, general operations. And
and I don't think we need to do
like
that.
that.
That's not necessarily staff.
No, I'm sorry. It was general operations. I'm looking back at my notes
Right.
now.
And I don't think we need to fund general operations.
No.
Yeah, I personally had CareNet, and I appreciate what CareNet does. I had them ranked a lot lower though. I had them ranked at a 9. My list showed them at $7,500.
You gave more than what I thought. Sir.
I gave him 40.
A bunch.
So
They
I think we
scored
ought to
high
put that
for
one in
me.
yellow.
Hey, now we know how we got these averages.
I think we better mark that.
Small
75 and
money.
0.
Yeah, I gave him 75.
they're good in counseling. Counseling is important given the environment that we're in, but they
I feel
don't.
like we're all gonna need counseling after this. So like seriously.
We're gonna need volunteer pay after what we've been through with these grants.
And, and folks, I just want to just going back to the general operating question for a moment. Earlier, I said that I was completely against general operating, and I think that was probably an overstatement. I'm not completely against it, but in the case of the first organization that we looked at, their entire application was for general operating, and so that didn't resonate well with me. But
I agree with that, James.
Yeah, the idea that an
We need to
organization
get we need to know it's touching people affected.
right, just the idea that a portion of the money is going to general operating, I don't have a problem with. But I just want to make sure that the vast majority of the money is going to programming. So like a 20% for general operating or something like that, I don't have a problem with.
Well, I just think in this time they're going to operate the way they're going to operate. So we should be dealing with the need.
That's my feeling. We need to put money in the hands of people who need it.
And people tend to hide things under that category. So that's my nonprofit experience.
Almost all nonprofits like it to be in a general pool of money that they can do what they want with.
Yeah. So where are we?
We're at Trellis Supportive Care.
We all know what they do.
Yes.
Yeah, but how much more do they need? They've got a $32 million budget,
Right.
and they asked for $100,000.
So I actually reached out to them, to Gail, because I had the same question. Like of everybody on this list, they usually are okay funding wise.
Yes.
All of this is going to PPE for the nurses and the CNAs that are doing the end of life care.
Mhm.
So that is where their increased need is. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's what they told me.
Okay.
No, I think it is real because now you have to wear it where you didn't have to wear it all the time when someone was just dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big operation. Again, I kind of said I didn't think the money would go to waste and it could be held accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
And they do good work.
And I'm glad you called, Mark.
Yeah, I'm glad you called too, because that makes me feel a little better.
So is the PPE to protect the nurses or is it to protect the patients?
Nurses.
Potentially what the nurses could be bringing in because they're not, I'm just curious
Doctor question. I think it's probably both, but I couldn't swear to that.
Okay.
Well, and I think I read it talked about protecting the hospice care patients and who are already vulnerable. Then there were 2 groups of patients that they focused on in their request. I support them. I think we ought to do theirs.
I believe it's an important organization, and I feel better about it with it being something that is quantifiable and something that is completely related to the pandemic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
And give
I don't know that they treat people of economic need. I don't know.
They do. They do.
Do.
They treat all people of all different economic
And back.
ranges.
Yeah.
Support them getting even more because they do.
Okay.
Okay. Hope Connection International. I had them ranked really highly on mine for some reason.
There are too many O's. I get them mixed up.
No.
I gave him $22,000. I'm okay with it.
I gave him 30.
I said 20.
Some 20.
I said 20.
20.
Okay,
I
sounds like
see.
we're in alignment there. Nueva Vida.
I just want to speak on them. I'm sorry. Was somebody else going?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
I-
I know their work. This is Daisy. They're a partner agency of Second Harvest Food Bank, as so many other of the agencies who have applied. They've been doing a lot of work
Yes, ma'am.
with African American as well as the Hispanic community.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they're serving seniors as well. So they're frontline. I mean, their money is going to go to doing what they do, and they've been around for a while.
Yes, ma'am. And just to Ms. Rodriguez's point, Mr. Mark and to Mr. Rowe, I actually found out about Mr. David Bellata via social media. I know that a lot of people don't really like to put heavy emphasis on social media because of maybe, the genre or demographic of people that may use it or may not use it. But I actually found out about him doing grassroots work. I'm in a grassroots organization myself that works with anti-street violence. And I actually found out about Mr. David Bellata, who is the founder and the CEO of Nueva Vida. When the 5-year-old Alberto Rios Jr., when he was, consequently lost his life in a drive-by shooting, I found out about his work in the Hispanic community as aforementioned. So I know there was a question earlier about what do we need to put more or less emphasis on. And I think in the case of Nueva Vida and New Life and Mr. Bellata, I think we need to put less emphasis on who sits on boards, notoriety, the numbers as it pertains to mass numbers of people, because sometimes we get so caught up in that, in the notoriety or the reputation or the name of an organization, and we forget about the nuance of people, and please pardon my modest vernacular, of people who put their foot on the ground, boots on the ground, who actually step in the hood. For those that don't know what that means inner city neighborhood. So I think that we need to put an emphasis on that. A lot of times people that work in these organizations, they may lack the formal education or the business savvy, and that's not to be insensitive to the fact that they don't need that. And I speak that as a banker myself for a minority bank. But sometimes I think that we also need to put emphasis on authenticity and the neighboring areas. As Ms. Rodriguez said, Mr. Bellata and his group, they serve Skyline Village every day. And they attend schools that's a Title I school. When the schools are only providing but so much, these people are out here, they're cooking meals. I'm not talking about chips and hoagie sandwiches. They're cooking meals. And you can check them out on social media. But we just can't, we need to put less emphasis. We can't put less emphasis on common sense and authenticity. And just because they may not be as business savvy, it doesn't mean that they're less capable of doing it. So
I agree.
to speak on that nuance about them, I feel like they deserve the full amount. They're feeding kids every day, ranging from the Eastern Ward or the South Ward, which is our poverty and criminal stricken wards, especially undocumented and underserved communities. And I think they deserve every dollar amount.
So I would just support Corey, and I would also add, though, going back to the earlier conversation that we had relative to Christ Rescue Temple Church in the spirit of what Brother Perry was talking about, let's make sure that they have the proper accounting support to manage the books on all of this, right? And I really think, Ben, it's something we may need to talk about if we can cordon off the money. Because I also, frankly, don't want to even burden these organizations who are in the community, putting, hands in the community straight up with the burden of having to figure out that bookkeeping management. Let's even see if there's a way to cordon off.
Hire a contractor.
To hire a contractor for any and all of these organizations who will provide the bookkeeping for them, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5 different organizations. This contractor will provide the bookkeeping for them, and they will be paid through some amount of money that is part of this $1 million that we are, allocating, so that they're fully supported and they can just focus on doing the work and helping the community.
Yes, sir. Just
This one's got to be highlighted again because we're highlighting all the ones where their budget's 6,000 and they're going to get 7, 5, 6, 7, 8 times their budget possibly.
Correct. That's correct.
just because they're a grassroots organization and we're putting them in a yellow highlight, it doesn't mean that they're less capable. So I just want to make a comment on that.
Well, I totally agree. I totally agree, Corey.
Yeah, and Corey, I agree too, and I think that the Reverend Ford put it very eloquently that it sounds like there's some coalescing around this idea that for these groups that we're highlighting, but where there's some synergy around supporting them, that in the end we're going to look at how we can put some either money or process on the side to make sure that we can both fund them and administratively and fiscally support them so that they can be successful. So yeah, I think that we all hear you.
Thank you for that conversation. Anything else on Nueva Vida?
No.
Okay. ASEAN Hispania, I probably said that wrong. Que pasa is how I've always known.
Hispana.
I didn't have any issue with them. I mean, they get out the news and the information out to the Hispanic community. They're the known news source for that. So I found it interesting that the city isn't translating any of that information. And so therefore it's falling on them to get that information out to the Hispanic community. So they're a trusted source. So I didn't see any issue with what they were requesting.
I thought the city had a Spanish. Ben?
You have to unmute.
So yes, our Human Relations Department, we have staff, and we do have city staff who translate, brochures for us, even when we've posted information on our social network platforms. We've also, our social media platforms, we've also provide postings translated into Spanish.
I thought I had seen that before.
Yes, I mean most recently the mayor's stay-at-home order.
Yeah,
we had a translation in Spanish.
Yeah, definitely.
But I would just say though, this is a good compliment for Nueva Vida. Sorry for the mispronunciation, but they don't have a website, and they're a small organization, and so supporting an organization that will that is a Spanish-speaking organization that will assist in general outreach, even though they're we're not requiring them to be in partnership. I think it can end up being a good compliment.
Yeah,
well,
and
they do that they don't know what they have, because in the request, even for Que Pasa, they said they wanted to put out in the web, but then they said people didn't have access to the web. So I think there's an overall communications or lack thereof.
Yeah, the radio station is how most of the Hispanic Latinos will get their information. Through the radio station. So yeah, technology, not everyone has the technology.
That's what it said in the request.
Okay. I'm going to mispronounce the next one. I'm just going to say.
Luz de Jesus Cristo.
Yeah.
Real good.
Iglesia Luz de Jesucristo.
She said that real good.
Yeah, I think Melissa and I, right? We both pronounced it.
Yes.
I did a little research on them, and they're on the northeast. They're in the northeast ward. They're very small, but they do serve quite a few people in that area who are in need of food and money and just living expenses. So they're doing good work. Again, it's on the ground kind of work. And they depend on donations and tithes. They don't get any kind of support.
I felt that they needed the entire money for the very reasons you just stated. I think that $10,000 was a small amount.
Exactly.
I felt the same
The
way.
opportunity of speaking
I
with them
just
as
think,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Her father didn't want to apply. I'm gonna be honest. I spoke with them, and the daughter is the one who actually applied on behalf of the church. Her daddy isn't one to be asking for stuff, so it didn't sit easy with them even applying. But they do serve a large mass
do.
of Hispanic communities. They bring the children to church. They feed them, they clothe them, they help with their light bill, they rent, groceries, everything.
Yeah.
So I also gave them the $10,000. I'm sorry.
I really,
Don't apologize.
No
Yeah.
reason
I
to be
gave it
sorry.
to 'em.
And hey,
So,
guys, I'll be honest with you guys. You know, I did it more numerically, and 9 and below, I didn't give any money to.
well,
So
but
I'm not making a judgment, or I certainly am not going to vote not to give them money. But I was just like, hey, if I can't come up with 9 points for these people, and I'm giving them something, I'm giving them automatically 2 or 3 because are they reliable? At some point, I just figured I wasn't going to get to. I just wasn't going to be enough money for everybody.
well, I looked at it also from a group of people that don't have complete trust, as many of us may now have or have not or have had not had in the past. And so they're not going to step up. And TT just confirmed the fact that her father didn't even want to ask. And I think that we have to be very cognizant of this part of our population, just as we are.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said.
Yeah. And we have highlighted them on here, but only because the ask is bigger than the budget. So we'll come back to that. Sinai CDC.
I didn't have any objection.
Me neither. I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, I didn't object.
Okay. Horizons Residential Care.
In some ways, that was a tough one for me.
It was really hard for me.
And for me.
and I felt like the only people they're going to serve is those who are already there. It's not like they're actually serving the needs of the people in the communities, more so the people that's the residential
Exactly.
in their homes. So I don't feel like they need that amount of money. Just me speaking. I can't speak, that's just me. I didn't see giving them $25,000, but I was nice enough to try and give them about 5 or 10.
Giving them.
I wanted to get them at least, like, I don't know if they're gonna be able to get some mask or PPE or something. So I was just like, well, maybe they could buy some gloves and stuff. I don't know.
TT, you might need to apologize for that one. I'm just saying.
Sorry. Please forgive me.
I kind of approached
I
it.
want to give it to them, but
Yeah, I approached this a lot like Brian did, and when I got my numerical scores, I then sort of grouped them. And Horizons did make the list of folks that I gave money to, but I only had them at $10,000 as well.
Okay.
What they talked about was advocacy, and they have 40 residents. I just didn't feel like they didn't cut it for me at all.
No, and not $1,000 advocacy. No way.
No.
No.
Let's highlight that one, Meredith, if you don't mind.
Easy zero for me.
10 or 20.
Yeah, I really think that they could be a 0 on this list.
I feel like they could too.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, and I would just, the only thing that folks haven't said about them is just that their budget is almost $6 million. And
Well, yeah.
Right.
and so, even $100,000 is a drop in the bucket for them. But, if we take the time to give them 5 or 10,000 just as a gesture, it's nothing for them. But for one of these other organizations, that 5 or 10,000, I mean, it's everything. And so I'd rather just make them a 0 and then go ahead and make a big difference for a smaller organization.
Great point, James.
That is a great point.
Absolutely.
Mark, can we just put a 0 over there and we'll actually have one done?
You
Well, that only took 2 hours.
Just wait, it's going to go really fast in about 20
Okay,
minutes.
all right.
Oh, goodness.
We
Okay.
didn't put the 0 in.
No, he won't let me, he won't do it.
Oh, Meredith.
Meredith.
We can put a 0 in the next one
I think
too.
we can do that for the time being in the orange column.
Yay!
Uh,
All right. Okay. Crosby.
Crosby.
Stills.
we don't need to fund staff positions. I'm sorry.
I agree.
I had 0.
that one.
I had 0.
I had 0.
They have tremendous support and will always be supported.
Have supported, right.
So I think
How do we get to 10,278?
I gave him 25. I was a Crosby scholar.
And I was a
Hey,
Crosby
believe
scholar,
me,
so I gave him 10.
Go TC.
oh my shit.
I had Horizons up there, so believe me, you got to give and take.
I'll take full credit for pulling that number up, y'all.
We can.
Are we okay with giving them 0, or do we want to come back and talk about the number?
I vote 0.
0.
0.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go with 0.
The budget anyway, so okay, fine.
Good. You can give them some money.
Okay. Solus
I gave
Christus.
them some, like Melissa.
Right.
How about Solus Christus?
Solos Christos.
My
Okay,
question-
that's a women's shelter.
I've got one question about Solus Christus. This looks like a wonderful program, but Ben, maybe you can help me with this. It appeared from the video I watched that they're based up in Yadkin County.
Yeah.
So my question was, are they in the purview of eligibility from a location perspective for a city grant? That's what I was confused on.
When I called and asked the lady, she said that they now have a 2 properties here in Forsyth County. And I, again, until you show me something functionable, I was just like, you try to still work with people, but I can't see city taxpayers' dollars going somewhere else.
So Ben,
I had
assuming
0 because of that,
they're
Paul.
functional, what's the answer about if their only functional thing is based up in Yadkin County? What's the answer to that question I just asked?
No.
Not muted.
It's got
Not
to
muted.
be
Go
a
ahead.
Forsyth County use.
Yes. And the answer is no.
Yeah,
Can I ask
An organization as it was, I really wasn't sure how COVID related it was.
Well, the one thing that got me was that the women they can't use their
Food
food
stamps.
stamps when they go to the grocery store because they're trying to keep everybody contained, so they can't physically go to the store. So the cost of food has gone up because they're having to have it delivered. So that was just something that I had not even considered, but so that's COVID related. The expenses are going up, so it's harder to feed them.
Yeah, and I think that's a legitimate concern. And I'm with you, Melissa, on that. I mean, I think that warrants some support. However, from a number of different perspectives, if they really don't operate
Not
in
Forsyth.
Forsyth County,
No.
it's problematic for us to fund them.
I didn't realize they weren't in Forsyth County.
No, they stated that the majority of the women come from Forsyth County, but we don't know that.
yeah.
So just a question and then a comment on the location. Are they the only entity that that sought to directly address domestic violence? I don't think that I saw anyone else for whom this was a priority or the number one issue in their application. And if they are, the score was extremely low. Is that right?
James, there was another one,
There was.
and then Family Services, which got money, from the Winston-Salem Foundation side.
Hope Connection deals with domestic violence.
Yeah.
And then just
Family Services also got a huge grant.
from on the private side. On the private side, right? Okay.
100,000.
Yeah.
And all I was going to say is that so the Urban League gets a lot of domestic violence calls, and we've run into the issue of more times than I can count, where all the shelters that provide domestic violence relief are full, and where we've ended up calling shelters all that in the surrounding counties over and over and over
Right.
again. Now, and as much as I have actually personally made some of these calls, I can't say that I've actually called this entity, but we have certainly had our own staff and had Ubers and had cab drivers to drive women and their families to shelters in counties all across North Carolina. So I'm not so, if it's a legal concern about this entity funding a group that is outside of the county, then I get it and I'll step off of it. But if it's not a legal concern, I don't think that is enough to walk away from it, just because there are so few bids when it comes to domestic violence. So
It reminds me that Urban League has not been there or does not know much or have not been interacting with them. So I think we need to bypass this. And
So should we take this one to 0? I mean, it sounds like that's what the general consensus is.
I'm
zero,
gonna
guys.
argue for a minimum of like 5, only for what James said. Like, I don't know. I just like this is going to be a situation where there's going to be a lot more battered women and a lot more families that are finding themselves. And this is like, they have a budget of 239,000. I wouldn't want to we don't have to give them the full 20, but I would say just a little something to help, to acknowledge what they're doing and also potentially helping more people that might end up. But that's coming from my perspective.
yeah, and I would just
As well.
and I was going to close and just say that I would say that if we funded them, that we would require that the funds be earmarked exclusively for residents that they're assisting who are from Forsyth County or from Winston-Salem, and that would deal with it.
Yeah, I
we
agree
have
with
no
that.
control over that. You can ask that, but you have no control over it.
You know, I get funding restrictions like that all the time, where
Exactly. But James, that's Urban League's different from this. We have no control, and that's micromanaging.
If they feel like they can't, work under those circumstances, they shouldn't accept the money then. But I think what I'm trying to do is to find, if this is one of the very few entities that is providing assistance for victims of domestic violence, then I would hate to see us turn them down on a technicality.
Yeah, I think they should get something, and I agree with that.
Let's highlight the 11,625, and we'll come back to that here in just a few minutes. All right.
I wish I knew they were in Forsyth County.
Yeah. Siembra?
You said that?
I
right?
had a question about
Right.
that, is whether or not we could, they're in another city, county, what's going on?
Yeah, they're in Greensboro. They
Yeah.
serve 6 counties, is my understanding, with Forsyth being one of them.
And I actually had them at about double that dollar amount.
Which was 11.
Oh, I had them at 5,000.
Yeah, I had a problem with the fact that they were so much broader. I mean, we're the city of Winston-Salem. We're not even Forsyth County. I mean, I know this fund is for all of Forsyth County, but these are city funds. And
0 because of it.
yeah, I had a real challenge with that.
I did too.
I mean, again, it just didn't score for me as.
Already have 131,000. I didn't give them anything.
Does anybody really know more about what they do other than what's on paper? I mean, any of the results?
No.
No. The website has very little also.
Yeah.
Let me share with the committee that as part of the due diligence by city staff, we checked the organizations to see if they were on the listed on the Secretary of State's website. This particular agency was not, and but if you look at their website, they are affiliated with another nonprofit organization. That's why we still gave them a yes. So there's an affiliation there, but appears that the organization itself, we couldn't find anything on any articles of incorporation. And that Siembre, North Carolina itself was a 501c3, but if you looked at their website, it looked like they are affiliated with a group, I think, Mahente.
Yeah.
So that's why we still showed it as a yes in terms of organization eligibility.
Well, it said something about them partnering with the Freedom Tree Institute for Dismantling Racism and Share Cooperative Winston-Salem. Does anybody know anything about that?
No.
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 No, it's a noble purpose, but again, is it COVID related?
Well, yeah. I mean, what they say is $20,000 to immigrant families who are not eligible for COVID-19 relief funds. So, you know,
That makes it so, yeah.
so it's the idea that if you are a citizen and you qualify for the COVID-19 funds, but that they're going to find folks who don't qualify and that they're going to provide them direct support that the government otherwise wouldn't provide them.
Our sheet says unauthorized immigrant populations with crisis needs caused by the virus.
Yeah.
I just feel like there are other organizations we know better that may be addressing some of these issues.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, let's flag that one in yellow. Is anybody in favor of taking it to 0? Let me ask that question while we're on it.
I had it at 0 on my own score sheet.
I had it at 0.
I had it at 0.
Is anybody not in favor of taking it to 0?
I have to voice my opinion. It's only fair. I think there are people that are being helped. So 0 for me doesn't work. I mean, I wouldn't give them the full amount, but I wouldn't do a 0.
Okay. Let's leave that one yellow then.
I think we'll find that every agency on here will help. But we need to look at what the money is really for and where it's supposed to be going.
Right. Well, let's go. We'll just leave it at yellow. We'll come back to it because I'm gonna hit all of them sort of at one time when we get done. I think if you'll scroll up, Meredith, just a little bit. I think we're on the epilepsy one. Epilepsy Alliance. Actually had them ranked relatively high.
I'm gonna go first and be honest. I gave epilepsy 0.
I gave him something. I know that. Let me just see.
I gave them 0 because they don't. I look at them the same way I look at Horizon, and the fact that in reading their application, they couldn't tell how many people with epilepsy they actually help here in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, the one thing I'll agree with you also, I gave them a 1 in the category of will they see an increased demand. I'm not sure that they will. I'm not saying what they do is unimportant. I'm just not sure they're going to see more of them.
Right.
That's my thought too.
When you don't have you have nothing to go off of based on who they're serving in Winston-Salem, because that's what the application was for, the city of Winston-Salem, not what you do for North Carolina. So I didn't have a lot to go on, so I said $0.
A very important organization, but I couldn't draw the connection between what they what they intend to do and the COVID-19 crisis.
Right.
Agree. And that's why I scored him a 9. I didn't see COVID in there.
I scored him an 8.
There's $0 for me.
Is anyone not in favor of taking them to 0?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
I'm with it.
0.
Okay, let's go ahead and put 0 then. I think I heard everybody correctly on that. Building homes for heroes.
Yeah, I everybody knows this organization, but I went and did a little bit of research, and they're in a national organization in Valley Stream, New York, and they mention all of the veterans they serve, but then they said 40 veterans in North Carolina, they'd like to help them. So I was confused as
Well, I
far
called
as,
them.
yeah, what did you
I
find out?
did. I called and I spoke to the lady, and she was very nice. Her name was Jasmine Leon. And what they do is actually not outside of just doing homes, they actually do emergency funding. And when I asked her, I said, well, this is a national organization, like you stated. So how do we know that those dollars would go directly into Winston-Salem? And she said that what they would do is take those dollars and provide them to the veterans here that's on the veterans list, whether it's through what is it, Veterans Helping Veterans or
Yeah.
any organizations like that, and that they would be able to be held accountable for the amount of dollars that we give to them and make sure that it's designated just for Winston-Salem. However, people could tell you one thing, that's something you just have to, and I'm a veteran, so I didn't say no, but I didn't jump out there and get him $50,000 either. I'm gonna say that.
Their
This is
website
This
and
is
easy 0 for me.
Kenneth Holly's a part of.
their website, they have a $10 million budget,
They
Easy
do.
0 for me.
and it's a 0. I said give them nothing.
I said nothing.
I said something. I have no problem giving nothing.
Same.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any problem with taking them to 0?
I did give him a 0 though. I just looked on my sheet. I'm sorry. I'm a veteran, but I had to keep my dollars. These are city taxpayers' dollars, and I have to be
Jasmine
held
couldn't close the
accountable.
deal.
No, I got to be
No.
held accountable. I gotta
Jasmine
make sure
couldn't
I'm
close
doing
the
what's
deal.
supposed to be required of me.
Well, look at the
Let's,
website was enough for
let's go
me.
ahead and put that at 0 then.
TT, thank you for your transparency.
I was being honest.
Hope to Thrive.
I have a conflict on that one.
I got a question about that one.
Who had the conflict?
Corey?
Corey? Okay.
Yes, that was me.
I read the application. I reached out to the people. However, I don't want to pay you because I don't think that these monies is to pay someone.
Right.
And they want $20,000 to pay a project manager. I can't do it. My spirit didn't say give these people no money. And I think they got like a little bit.
I gave him a little bit too.
Yeah, I gave him
A little.
bit, like 10,000.
I gave him 10,000.
So
I gave him 10,000.
I gave them 0.
I gave them 15, but I tend to go on the high side.
Let's make that in yellow and come back to that one.
Corey, what do you know about that organization?
Yeah, Corey, what's your conflict?
I am her banker. I'm their banker.
Oh, that's a big conflict.
Okay. Associates in Christian Counseling.
Hmm.
Okay, hold on.
A little bit.
I gave him 10,000, but to be honest with you, Brenda, I went back after I didn't get to my million at my first run through and gave people some money, who were like borderline 9 and whatnot. But to be honest with you, the application just didn't really impress me. Nothing about it really was that impressive.
It left me, as a few of them did, with the impression, oh, the city's got some money, the foundation, whoever, I'm going to fill out this form and they'll get it. I went to the website. I was not impressed. I'm sorry.
I agree.
And they
I
only
gave him
have
10.
50 clients. Oh, they only have 50 clients, and I didn't feel like that it was appropriate for this COVID thing.
Right, so I think we're saying 0. Is that right?
Yeah.
Anyone have any issues with taking it to 0?
I have none.
No issue.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that, Meredith. All right, industries for the blind. I had a little bit of an
Let
issue
me
with it.
disclose that I am on their board, so I will have no comment.
Which what? Well, since they got a $200 million budget, and we giving them 41. I mean, I can keep my 41. That ain't nothing. Y'all don't need that 41,000. I know you on the board, but you don't need that 41,000.
I had a lot of issue with this one. I really respect what the Industries for the Blind does. But this is an employee support fund, is what this
Right.
is funding, and I just don't think that's what this money is intended to be. I think you're trying to reach a broader segment of the population, in my opinion.
I felt the very same way. I just didn't think it fit our criteria.
It was another one where I had a 0, then went back and gave money because it just seemed like they've kind of fallen on hard times, and I think they are a real asset to the community. But I didn't see the COVID piece.
Well, you know, I gave them money. I'm the one that brought that number up at 50. Okay, I'll be honest, but apparently I'm really crappy at not giving people things. So.
No, I'm with you. I gave them 20. I still felt
I did too.
You know,
But in the grand scheme of thing, according to their budget, even if we were to give them 20, I think we go back to the previous point that James made. 20 to another organization could potentially help a whole lot more people than 20 to the Industries of the Blind.
The blind. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'd be willing to put like a 0 down there and maybe like something to maybe come back if there was money, right? But that's just me.
There's going to be money.
There may not be. We may be able to give some of the other people what they asked for.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be a 0. When I think through all 42 of these, they would be in the bottom 6 or 7 of my list.
mm-hmm.
So just
We're taking it to 0. Okay. Bring that. All right.
Quiet I was.
Sorry.
Thank you, Brenda.
Winston-Salem mixer.
Masks.
That's what I couldn't figure out from their application. They've been making masks. Is that what this is for? It wasn't clear to me.
It wasn't clear that this would go to masks, but I just know that that's what they've turned their, creative
But it
builders
didn't say
into.
that. It didn't say that. So
I agree.
give them the money, but I want to tell them they have to do it to keep making masks. Can we do?
making face shields.
Yeah,
Let's just go ahead and be clear. They're making
Face
face
shields.
shields. They're not making masks.
No, face shields. You're right.
Sorry, Melissa.
Right.
Any issues with what that is? If it is in fact making masks?
I didn't give them anything.
Well, I did, because we all have to have these masks, and even though there are volunteers making them, there's still a lot of people who are not getting them. And based on what they said they're giving these masks, I think they should have some money to make them.
They're making face shields, which are going directly to the providers. They are not making masks to the extent that some other people are.
Are they selling them or donating them?
Donating.
Yeah, I gave them 10,000.
10,000.
Well, I gave them some money, but I called and spoke with the man, and they're currently not even open and operating.
Exactly.
Nor are they doing any work in there whatsoever. Not to say not to give them no money. I'm just saying.
But if
They're
nothing's
not open and doing. So if they're not open and operating, then they just say no money
They're close to the public, but they're still in there making these face shields. They just see, you can rent space in there and make stuff if you want to, and that's the part that's closed. But they're still making the face shields, as I understand it.
Yes.
Are they making them, or is one of the groups that is renting space making face shields? Do you know?
I think it's some people associated with like members. It's members that are part of the Mixer community that are making those items out of their homes using 3D printers.
Right. So, but then therefore, it's in theory not actually Mixer. It is the members that's making PPE.
I think so.
James, that's a good point. And I didn't think that they served anyone directly that would be COVID related. I didn't give them a high score on that. And I gave them 10,000, but I didn't see where it was a direct connection.
So it says the Mixer community of makers. So the people that are associated with them have been working remotely and collaborating remotely to produce PPE for healthcare workers in Winston-Salem, High Point, Greensboro, Durham, and Raleigh. They've been coordinating with the manufacturer of ear savers for face masks. They've been delivering them to hospitals. So they've made 2,000 of those, and then 200 3D printed face shields.
Yeah. So if they, and that's how I understood it. And I guess my point was going to be if a nonprofit said that they were making those face shields and then donating them or making them available at cost in dealing with a really key COVID-19 need, then that'd be really compelling to me. Or if Mixer said that they were making their facilities available for free to the businesses that were making the masks that they were cheaper, then that would be really compelling. But it seems to me like they're just saying that businesses that rent space aren't actually using their space, but are at home making masks, and that's good information for us to have, but that's not actually what the money that would get spent on.
And that's too many questions, so I say no.
Yeah, right. It's a complex web. I agree.
Yes.
So is anyone in favor of taking it to zero?
Zero.
I'm not.
Okay, let's leave it yellow then.
Okay.
I support zero.
Mr. Chair, this is Ben, just wanted to chime in real quick again. At the beginning of your meeting and the general statutes, I mean, when you look at the target populations that are noted for the COVID-19 response fund in general, it includes healthcare workers, but for the city funds specifically, though, it still has to be focused on, low and moderate income populations that are impacted.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And
So how does this even affect moderate income?
They don't.
Well, some of your hospital workers aren't probably in the moderate income factor.
Right.
But
category.
they're gonna get protective gear.
Well, that's what they're doing. They're donating it to the hospitals.
But the face shields are specifically for use by doctors. The ear savers would be for like the nurses and other people, not doctors. Just throwing that out there. But you're right, it's not necessarily.
It doesn't to me.
It affects the healthcare workers mainly because it provides them with PPE.
Ben, does it even qualify?
That's my question.
Right. Well, again, the statute, says community development programs that the city can provide those kind of programs. In this case, support, an agency provide those programs for low and moderate income individuals.
What would the citizens say?
Yeah, I think it would be very difficult for us to say that they are or are not giving or donating what they're making to a low or moderate income individual. I don't know that we can know
We
that.
got to defend what we do to the community.
But I don't think it's a compelling argument.
It's been a zero for me.
Is anyone not in favor of taking it to zero based on that criteria?
I think zero it is.
I'll take mine down to zero.
TT was the person who TT was adamant about funding it. I think she was the standout.
Oh, what? Wait a minute. Adamant, well, wait a minute. I wasn't adamant about funding it.
Okay.
What I
I'm sorry
said
about
was I called and spoke to them to see how this was going to directly impact those in the communities. Now that's what I say. Now I didn't say
Okay,
give him no
all right.
money.
All
James
right,
wants to
all
get you riled up.
Right.
right.
Don't throw me under the bus with that one. Now, you know,
Oh, man.
I put zero. I didn't give him that. I'd be the first one to say I didn't give him anything, but I was being
Let's
nice
leave that at
about it.
0 and let's move on to Operation Hope.
This is an easy 0 for me. I mean, they have a gigantic budget. They're based in Atlanta.
20 million, but
And come on, let's.
yep.
If someone wants to fight for them, then fight for them. But otherwise, let's give it a 0 and keep it moving.
Is anybody not in favor of taking them to 0?
No, I gave them somebody, but I'm not opposed to going to 0.
I agree with Daisy.
I gave a bunch of money, but I'm not opposed. I mean, I think they have a local presence. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, where they're headquartered from, but
I know, we're kidding you. But they
Brian, are you okay with taking it to 0?
0.
I mean, I'm getting pushed around. I'm okay with it though.
All right.
Let the record show 13364 got pushed around.
Hey, but see, no one will know who I am. It was 3364 guy.
I don't know, they'll
I
find
really
a voice
don't give them
recognition.
a 0, but I guess you have to, since that's what you all are saying.
Well, they have too much money. They don't really need our money.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that. Yeah,
Just look
You
more
know-
at what they were doing for the doctors and the nurses and what have you, the health people, because I know they need help. And if I have to go to, I'm in that category. I'm 30, and if I have to go there, I want them to be able to help me. So I guess that's what I was thinking about.
All right.
Do you want
I'll-
to advocate TT for more money, for
Now,
more than 0?
Why you want me to advocate? No. Open minded my business.
Oh, TD, I'll stand up there with you. I mean, I'll give him 10. No, never mind. 13364 is out.
Go ahead and just and just do what you do.
Let's go to the university.
Okay,
Yeah.
Piedmont International.
0.
0.
Anybody not in favor of 0?
Oh God, hold on. I think I gave him money. Hold on.
I gave them money too, don't feel so bad.
Probably gave him money.
Hey man, hold on a second now. I mean,
I gave him
first
$5,000.
of all,
I gave him $5,000.
Their website. I'm
I
telling you.
gave him 10.
I gave him 20. I mean, I think they do serve part of the community. I think they're important to the community. I think that there is going to be real COVID-related expenses to any educational organization from this. I mean, you know, I don't know.
They are serving a diverse community of students, and that was one of the reasons that I also gave them money. I just felt you're going to feel this later on.
Did you see who else they've applied to and where they're getting money? If you go to their website, they had all these other things. That was part of my deciding factor.
What other places have they?
I didn't even jot them down in my notes, but when I looked at it and looked at their budget, I thought, no. Not when there are others that need the money.
And I don't have a problem going to 0, but I thought our community is going to look very different when it comes to education. Very, very.
Okay, I remember it. They got $997,000 from one place and $400,000 from another place. That's
Right.
in my notes.
TT.
You're welcome, Sugar. I got you.
Thank you for that information.
I actually believe it would be good for this group to give that local college university some money.
I put down 20. I put 20.
Here's
5.
I think that they are a very important educational institution in this community. But my presumption though was simply that this fund was not the place for educational institutions. You know, every other educational institution is either a nonprofit entity or a quasi-governmental entity, and so and every single one of them is having similar challenges, and I think frankly the challenges that every single one of them has, and including this entity, dwarfs the amount of money that they're asking for, and it dwarfs the amount of money that the fund has. And I didn't think that we could, that the amount that they were asking for or the amount that we could make available could truly address their needs, and that the money could better serve other organizations. And I also thought that the argument that they made was just so general. You know, they just kind of really talk so generally about minority students and low-income families, but without putting a number on it to help me to see, you know, how many minority students and how the money is going to be allocated across that number of students to see if it's really going to have an impact. You know, at the end of the application, I think they give you know, they give a percentage of on their undergraduate students on their minority breakout, but it still doesn't then also give us, you know, how many of them are low income and that kind of thing to help us to understand, you know, how this money actually gets used in a way that addresses the COVID-19 crisis. I think there'll be some time to come back and help the educational institutions. My assumption was just that this was about more emergency-based needs, like, you know, that we've been addressing so far.
And I'd like to add that even though you see the amount they have in their budget, all of the schools are going to be cut. They're not going to have the money that they started out in their budget. They're not going to be getting all of the money that they were supposed to get in their budget. So I'm in favor of giving them something.
I think that they used the opportunity to highlight the minority community just for this educational opportunity application process. And I just feel that there will be other things and other opportunities, as James said, that we can take a look at that. But I can't defend this to the community. So I mean, if somebody in the community says, why did you give this to them when someone here needs food or needs assistance with something else that's far more important, I could not defend that.
And a lot of their students are online and not necessarily from here.
Exactly. That's the thing that I noticed.
All right. Do we want to come back and revisit this amount?
Zero.
I'm okay with zero.
Can we just give them zero and move on?
Yep, zero.
I'm not okay with zero.
Well, majority rules.
How about Alana Austin Family Foundation?
428.
I didn't see where this fit our criteria.
I agree.
Yep, I agree.
Anybody not in favor of taking it to zero?
I gave him zero.
Okay. Journey Bees Village. I did give them some money.
Yeah, I didn't.
I did too.
Anybody have any issues with what's on there? 15,889.
I gave them
No,
15.
I just got a question.
Yes.
I do have a question. So when you look at Journey Bees and what they do, and according to their application, why they wanted $80,000, a lot of times when people say they paying rent and mortgage and all this stuff, for example, we use crisis control, and you'll go in there with all that red tape and still can't get any help. So when you put in your application, we're gonna do your rent, your mortgage, your utilities. Are you still looking for the same criteria as crisis control and other places when people have an urgent need today? Even though the sheriff said we're not gonna evict anybody, this and the third, light bills say you don't have to pay right now, but that stuff's still gonna come. You know, whether it's transportation, food, cleaning, hygiene products. I got my notes on what they said they were gonna do with it. So
Has anyone worked with them before, or is anyone familiar with them?
I'm
No.
familiar with them. They did a they did a community outreach program over on Fifth Street back in October of this past year, where quite a few people came out and spoke, and they had the vendors set up. I know that they go out to the different low income housing. Preferably, they like going down to Ladera Crest and assisting those families down there.
That's the one. Yeah, that's, yeah. No.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I do remember those events, TT. That's very helpful. Yeah.
That's a conflict.
What, that I remember the events?
Yes.
Well, this was for support for general operations as well as emergency assistance.
And we just don't need to fund money for operations, in my opinion.
Right.
The main thing I thought they had going for them was that they're trying to address teens and young people, and that's a critical population for us. But it was more like learning and education from what I could see. So I didn't quite understand where the food and emergency medical supplies or whatever, where that was going to fit into what they're already doing.
I hear zero.
I could support funding them, but at a reduced amount to reflect some of the concerns, and then also to reflect the cutting the general operating funding.
Yeah.
I agree with James.
Let's highlight that one in yellow. How about bottom up outreach center?
Can you pull up meantime to see if they had a breakdown of what was going to operation expenses in that one?
I just looked at it and it did not break it down.
Okay.
Okay, so for bottom up research, here's, in my opinion, again, they're not doing anything that's actually directly helping someone else. They want to spend their money on gym equipment and stuff. Why you buying gym equipment if we can't even be in the building together right now?
Right.
Not a dire need.
Zero.
So I gave them zero.
That one.
Yeah, I gave them zero.
Any opposition to going to zero on bottom up?
No.
How about We Team Youth Services? I had zero on mine.
Oh,
I gave him $2,000.
Yeah, I gave him 6.
I gave him 6. Go TT.
Zero.
I gave him 6 also. So.
I'm okay with the 3333.
Anybody not okay with the 3333?
My comment was now this is We Team Youth Services.
Uh-huh.
I had made a note, no experience. It's a startup.
Yes.
For a startup. So why are we putting money into something if there's no track record?
Well, I gave him $2,000.
Part of it is a school, and the schools aren't in session.
Exactly.
I had them at a 0.
I mean, because when you read what they were going to do.
I gave them 6,000, thinking that hopefully they would have enough sense to take their 6,000 and go over there with Nueva Vida New Life, since they all over. Because that's Morning Star, you still in the Skyline area, and they could collaborate. That's my thinking. But I can't tell nobody what to do.
But give it to somebody else that needs it.
Yeah, because they're talking about pilot programs and stuff, and
that's not an emergency need.
Okay, so any opposition to zero?
3364 is about to fall off the chair. Could he be any more wrong again? Hey, but I'm just 13364. I'm okay with going to 0.
You just didn't know
13364.
You didn't know you had people with microscopes looking at this.
Oh, I absolutely loved it. I love all the information flow here. Believe me, I love it.
How about?
I know that we're going to add up to about $700,000, and then we're going to have about 10 minutes.
I got you covered. All right. How about shared WS?
Zero.
Yeah. To me, it hasn't started, so they're not really serving anyone.
Exactly.
Well, from talking to Reverend Williams, what they were trying to do is, even though it's a startup nonprofit, they were looking at doing online grocery shopping.
Yeah, but
That's all I know. I'm not gonna go in no further. That's all I can tell you.
added
It's easy to say and hard to do.
Great concept, but they're not serving right now.
Right.
Right.
a
That's
zero.
my concern.
Zero.
Any opposition to zero?
We're moving.
All right. Senior Care Training Center, I had zero on them as well.
Zero.
Yeah.
I had
Hold on.
zero.
I'm sure I gave him a bunch of money.
You just got tired at the end.
Extra money. And I tried to be, I just tried to be.
Unanimous.
No,
I
that's for
gave them
staff
zero.
training. We don't need to be staff training at this point in time. That's what they.
No, we're in crisis mode. We're in crisis mode.
That's zero.
Zero.
They were one of my lowest scorers, so I had zero.
For the senior care training, is that where a vast majority of what they wanted their funds to go to was for training?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that no, I mean, it was all for training.
Right. Zero.
All right. Now the next one, I'm going to take community progressive development and music for a cause together.
No.
Because I think there was an
It's
issue
the
with their
same
application.
Yeah, they look the same.
No, they just copied each other's because they said we're gonna apply for this money.
It's
Zero,
the same
zero.
person.
Yeah, I couldn't
Zero, zero.
figure out whether it was a copying or whether it was messed up in the system.
No, it's the same person that applied for it
Right.
because they own both nonprofits, and
Zero.
they're not doing anything with those nonprofits.
Right,
I have zero for both of them. Anybody have an opposition to zero on those?
No.
No.
All right. What about junior league?
No.
No.
Anybody have any opposition on that?
How about 13364? Do you oppose that?
Are we giving them zero?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
You did give them money, didn't you?
I'm looking.
We're gonna need you to justify giving them money is what we're saying.
Yeah, you don't have to count on me for that.
Yeah.
While you're looking, Brian, let's look at teaching life choices.
Hey, I gave junior league zero. Ha. And what's the other one? And hey, I'm 13364. There's people listening.
They don't have a track record either.
No.
I say no.
That's a lot of money.
I'm telling you. To
Yeah.
do nothing with.
Zero.
Any opposition on that?
Zero.
No, I have no opposition.
All right.
I gave him zero.
Nobody on this end of the page getting no money.
Just a reminder that this is a public meeting, so just be careful what you say. Joyful Soul Treasures. I did actually give them a little bit of money. They didn't ask for a lot of money.
I did too.
I gave them $1,400.
And the justification was.
Yeah, why did you give them $1,400, Mark?
I don't remember.
Zero. They
Actually,
scored
the one
7.
was zero, yeah.
I have them at zero.
Oh.
I actually scored them at a 10, and I think it was just because when it averaged out, that's what it averaged out to.
I scored them
And
at
they
a
weren't
9.
really particularly spectacular in any category, but they were okay all the way across the board.
Zero.
Zero.
I'll go to zero.
Zero.
Okay, now, so that wraps the first cut through the list. Now, let's go to the diapers, the Love Out Loud, and Simon Jack.
This one,
Which one is this?
music or,
No. We already gave them zero.
We
okay,
took
I
Okay.
had zero. I had to run out for a minute.
Mark, would it be inappropriate for me to ask that the CBO average grant award, where there are zeros, the blue numbers be put in zeros, and we see where we are total wise before we revisit?
Well, what we can do, Meredith, if you don't mind doing this, the ones that are in blue, as Brian said, that aren't highlighted in yellow, that don't have 0 beside them, go ahead and move them over to the column to the right.
Okay.
Now, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
What's happening?
Because like the backpack program, I was going to advocate for upping that if we had money.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that, but hold on, just hold tight for a second.
All right, okay, sorry, that's pushing.
Yeah.
We're just
Now,
gonna
while
see.
he's doing that, the three that I heard people up before this one, Gail, the three that I heard people say that they wanted to increase were the diapers, the Love Out Loud, and the Simon G. Atkins CDC.
Yes.
We want to increase theirs to the maximum amount.
I didn't say I wanted to increase.
I ain't say that.
I
Hold
didn't
on.
say that.
Let's go to the diapers here in a second. I think you
The
got
diapers,
them all.
the diapers, yes.
Diapers,
Yes.
Yes, to 25,000.
Agreed.
So anybody opposed to going to 25,000 from 19,000 on diapers?
For the diapers, no, we're good with that.
Now,
Mark,
what
when you say,
about,
Mark, you just as a point of clarification, you mean going to the requested amount, not to the maximum amount. Is that correct?
the maximum requested amount? Yes. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. The requested amount.
Yeah.
Out Loud was another one that we discussed. The 75, we had them in here at 52. We want to go to 75 on Love Out Loud.
yes.
Yes.
Opposition to that.
No.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
We're doing it.
Simon G. Atkins, which is right below that, had asked for 50 and we have them at 34. Do we want to go to 50?
I vote yes.
Now, who is that?
Simon G. Atkins, CDC.
We found a neutral ground somewhere. I can't just give everybody the max because that's just not sitting well with me with everybody just getting the max what they ask.
Giving them 35.
I'm not suggesting that. These were the only three that we talked about that on. That's why I brought them up.
Yeah, I strongly
35.
support. I strongly support 50,000 for SG Atkins.
I do too. That kitchen and stuff that they're doing, I think is going to employ people as well as feed people.
That's exactly what
Exactly.
it's gonna do.
Yeah.
That's exactly what.
I'm in agreement with that as
I
well.
agree, 50.
Now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this list that we flagged in yellow because they were asking for more than what their annual operating budget was.
Correct.
Now, this is where we had discussed the possibility of helping them in terms of back of house accounting function. So my question is, one question is for Ben, is that even possible? Can we do that?
And you're assuming there may be some that would need that help, but there's some on here that don't need that help. And I just don't see that as our role.
Well, so, and let me just, and I hear you, Brenda. I think that we should offer it. I think we should make the money available for it, but I don't think we should require it. And I think, and at that point, if as long as we've made the money available for it and we've offered it, I think we will have done our due diligence.
I would second that.
The money should come from the taxpayers' dollars for it. That's not what our charge is supposed to be with this. This money was not for providing bookkeeping assistance.
Right.
Well,
Ben,
But I think
chime
the
in?
question that was discussed, and I think it's a valid conversation piece, is if each of these organizations, if they did not have the appropriate resources to account for this and report it in the way that the city needed it to be reported, then they're all going to have to hire it individually. And would it be more impactful to give them, to set aside a piece of money, maybe outside of what we're talking about giving these organizations, for a shared bookkeeper that could be made available, and we can make them available to anybody that we are giving money to, for that matter. Would it make more financial sense and do better good with the money, be better stewards of the money that we're giving if we did that?
And I know it's not our charge. I agree with Brenda as far as that's concerned, but the city, tell us, is that something we can do?
Yeah, that's a Ben question, right? Ben?
Yes, so let me say that, the council is very specific about how these funds were to be used. And it's, not to be used for general operating support. It's not to be used for overhead. It's, to enable, these organizations to, increase their capacity to serve these targeted populations. And in the case of the city funds, the low and moderate income, individuals and families. I would say to you that, I mean, city staff can help connect these small organizations with, nonprofits and others. I mean, I think about a hands-on Northwest North Carolina that can help them with their capacity building.
Yes.
Funding, their ability to be able to account for those funds. I mean, that's not the direction that or the intent of the council in providing these funds to the COVID-19 response fund.
Yeah. And I think that's help and to provide the resources if they need it. But clearly,
Right. I agree with what Ben just said as far as connecting them to partners out there, to other folks. Hands-on is an example, but there's plenty of others, so that they don't feel they're overwhelmed.
Okay. So let's say that we're not going to create a separate bucket of money because we can't do that.
Right.
Right.
Let's look at these 5. We got St. Peter's, Christ Rescue, Great Commission, Nueva Vida, and Iglesia. So there's 5, and let's look at each of those individually really quickly and see what we want to recommend in those situations.
What about Hope to Thrive? I had Hope to Thrive in my.
Yeah.
I had Hope to Thrive as their request was too high.
Yeah.
I got one more list.
Oh, okay, never mind then. I just knew that was one there was a big gap. Okay.
I am going to speak on behalf of St. Peter's and to say to you that the record keeping, the bookkeeping, their ability to keep up to the absolute penny is there. And I know this because of past involvements with them with funding.
Okay. Is anybody opposed to keeping the 44,800?
Wait, whoa. Can I have a final look when we're done?
Yes.
Oh, okay, then I'm not opposed.
I agree.
Opposed.
I agree.
I agree.
Carry that one over. Christ Rescue, they're asking, or the average is 36,700, and their annual budget 7,300. Anybody opposed to the 36,700?
Did anybody have anything to say about this organization, this church?
They've always done what they needed to do. I've never heard anything to the contrary. I don't know them as well as I do from the back room side as I do St. Peter's, but they have done a tremendous work in this community, and they've not had any scandals.
Right.
And that speaks volumes.
Yeah. Then let's move it over.
They're helping families, not just in the East Winston area, but actually all over Winston-Salem, and they do profound work. They stuff is solid.
Okay, then let's move it over.
Yeah, move it over.
Great Commission is community church is the next one. They're asking, or our average is 28,900, and their annual budget's 5,000. Any issues with that, or does anyone know that organization?
I know who the person is. I know what they've done across the community. And this is because of my involvement in the church community and knowing some of these folks. I don't have a problem giving her that amount of money, or giving Great Commission, rather, that amount of money.
And what's the amount again?
28,889.
889.
Oh, let's do that, because this amount will continue to help feed the homeless at the Bethesda Center.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That is what their application says. So I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, they've been doing that with what they have.
Yeah, so this is going to help them continue to feed the homeless.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, yeah. And they're asking for
more than one day, because I think they've been doing it But as I recall reading, they're going to increase the number of days.
Yes.
So I think
I gave them 40,000.
I was gonna say, can we look at giving them the full amount? And see what that does to our numbers, just.
That's the next step.
Okay.
I'm just saying, as long as we're visiting it, because by the time we get back here, I'm gonna forget. Just for accounting purposes.
Notes.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So we're gonna give them
So let's
40?
take that over there.
Now we're just pulling over the 28.9.
Now we've got them at 28,889.
Let's go to 30.
No, not that. That's not this time.
No, we have to wait. We have a process.
Yes, because there's others we have to look at.
Oh, we moved on to somebody
Nueva
else.
Vita.
No, I'm so. Who?
Nueva Vita was the next one.
I mean, I think they get at least the 25,333.
Yeah, I agree.
There was some strong support from them earlier,
Yeah, it sticks in my mind, so.
Move it over, give it to them.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. And then Iglesia was the last one.
Somebody else. I'm sorry. I was looking at something else.
So Iglesia is 7,000. There was some very strong support for them as well.
Yes, they need to get
Okay,
the full
leaving
amount.
7,000.
10,000 is what they asked for. I think they need to get the full amount.
Oh, yeah, because they were the ones where the dad didn't even want to ask.
Dad didn't
Right,
even
I
want to
said
pay
full
it.
amount.
Right.
I think they are worthy, and for what they're doing.
I agree. I would be willing
right,
to
so
put down
now-
10.
Now we have 4: Iglesia, Nueva Vita, the Great Commission, and Backpack Program. People have advocated to go to the full ask. Does anybody have any issue with that on those 4?
Okay,
We have not talked
Backpack,
about
I
the
have no
backpack
issue.
I have no issue with backpack either.
Same.
We're good.
Do it.
All right, so Backpack would go to 100.
Hey, Mark.
Nueva Vita would go to their full number, which would be 50,000.
Oh,
Would you-
Jesus. Wait a minute, y'all. Stop.
Mark, would you mind if Meredith would total the bottom of the final grant award column, even while we're in this process, just so that we can keep a tab as we're going forward?
Yep. So right now we have 380,000 remaining. We have 7 that are going to get moved over, but probably at a reduced amount. So we'll do that in just a second too, and then we'll see at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey,
Did
Mr.
y'all
Dunn,
just say give New Life $50,000?
What was your recommendation, TT?
Can we find a halfway? I'm trying to be as open and transparent as possible. But again, when you're talking about, and I know it's supposed to be for low income and minorities and the criteria. I think sitting with me is the fact that I'm spending $50,000 worth of taxpayers' money, Skyline Village, where it don't even have a full capacity of occupants. And I'm still taking into consideration that a lot of the residents in that area receive SNAP benefits and just got a 40% increase. I'm just saying.
Where is Asher Park? It said Skyline Village and Ashler Park. Where?
Astor Park.
They only do Astor Park on Saturdays.
Maybe
When permitted. I spoke to David Vallada on the phone. So, I mean, I
they
don't know.
do it it's not every Saturday. It's not every Saturday.
See? So it's not even every Saturday.
All right, so a halfway point would be 37.5. How does 37.5 sound?
Before we do that, Corey, I believe you were the one that spoke up on behalf of Nueva Vita New Life. Isn't that right?
I was, and I believe that a portion of that, like a half of that full requested amount, was going to the food and resources or whatnot, and then the other half was supposed to go for undocumented families.
That is what I read also, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and we got to keep in mind,
which in those areas they have a plethora of residents that are undocumented, and these are the neighborhoods that are disproportionately affected as it pertains to COVID-19.
That's right.
By huge volumes.
And let's keep this in mind, folks. Remember that undocumented immigrants, even though some of them are paying taxes, they're not eligible for any of this federal stimulus money.
Exactly.
We got to take care of them. We got to take care of them and make up the gap. I'm for 50,000.
I'm for 50.
Let's put it there. Okay.
Give him the 50.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Great commission would go from 29 to 40.
Where is,
Where is Great Commission?
yeah, I can find great.
They're the ones that are doing Bethesda. See, I told you we weren't going to remember.
Okay. Move it. Melissa.
8 to 40.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I had him at 35. I'm good with 40.
Let's
40.
Let's do 40.
I see.
Okay. And then Iglesia would go to 10 from
Yes.
72.
Yes, yes.
What's our total looking like, just out of curiosity by now?
We have 250.
Yeah, we have $360,000 left to give if we want to. Now, we got to move over. There are 7 that we have to move over, and we had talked about doing it at a reduced amount, starting with the Exchange Club for the prevention of child abuse. With the average was 52, and we said that there were some folks that were uncomfortable at that amount.
Let's see, what did I have here?
Enough, okay, Exchange Club.
You know,
45?
where we are, they really are gonna need funding, but I guess I could live with 40 or 45.
I would go
I say 45.
45. I would go with that.
Let's go 45. We're going to vote on this in a minute, so everybody will get to look at it again.
Okay.
School Health Alliance was 69, roughly.
That one we had a lot of questions about.
A
Yeah.
lot of questions about this.
Did.
Can we come back to that one?
We can.
Yeah.
You can go to the CareNet. We had a lot of questions on CareNet as well.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. We'll come back to those two.
Yeah, those are hard.
Those are the hardest ones, I think.
Let me ask you this. I mean, are we going to spend all the money? I mean,
We don't have to. There's
we don't have to, but why aren't we?
Why wouldn't we?
What are we saving it for?
Exactly.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Let me ask this, Ben, if we don't give out the $1 million today, what happens to the remainder of the funding?
Exactly.
Right.
So the remainder of the funding, I mean, is still available for future grants. I did reach out to the foundation today and to ask this very scenario, what would happen. And the distribution committee, I believe, is going to meet here soon and to determine whether there's a need to reopen the grant application portal. And so that could be a next reopen the portal and accept new applications for funding, and at that point determine which applications should come for city review and for remaining funds.
If we
My
reopen,
personal
we
opinion.
really,
Go ahead.
if we reopen, we really need to have some clear reasons why we did not fund these places that we're not funding.
Mhm.
They're gonna come back. They're gonna come back.
Yeah.
If you had money, why didn't you give me some?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we stated them. I mean, in the course of this meeting, I think for all the groups that we zeroed out, I think we very clearly stated why we were zeroing, giving those
Okay.
0. I think the only ones where I feel iffy about are the ones that are in yellow, where we still have some discussion about. But for everyone where we put a 0, I mean, we had a very clear
Uh-huh.
discussion and we made a decision. And for me, it wouldn't matter if we had money left over or not. I don't think it's a priority based on what the fund goals are.
In almost all the cases, they just didn't meet the criteria.
Mhm.
Right. That's true.
I'm just
All you
saying we
need
need,
to say. I mean, really, that's all. We don't need to get into, because with 11 different stories, we don't need to do that. We need to have one standard that they didn't meet the criteria based on what we had.
Correct.
So I think we get to the end of the discussion of those that we still have to discuss and see if there's money left over. right? And then decide at that point if we're okay to like not spend it all, or we're okay to continue to give a little bit more to some of those we didn't fund initially fully.
Okay, let's go.
So let's go to Solus Christus. Probably said it wrong
That
again.
was the women's battered shelter, the women's home. I mean, I'd be down for 10.
Again, I don't want to. I'm all for it as long as they got something in Forsyth County. And I know what Jane said, and I understand it, and I know it's a huge problem. I just think that's an easy one to read and investigate and go, this thing's not even in Forsyth County.
I can support 10.
I support.
I support it.
Let's
10.
put 10 for now.
Support 10 as well.
I'll support 10 if everybody wants to.
They asked 20.
Sambro was a similar question about making sure that the money was being spent in Forsyth County. And I would remind everybody that, well, at least I hope this. I hope that part of the reporting process is that you have to show the money was spent in Forsyth County.
Exactly.
Right.
And they wanted 41,545.
And yeah, and the average was 16,280.
Give them 20.
Yeah,
I
that's,
don't like these. Let's round it to 20.
Okay, do it to 20.
I'm good with 20.
Okay. Hope to Thrive. This is one that, this is, Gail, you mentioned this one. I left this, they are asking for more than their budget, but also,
More.
Yeah.
also people were concerned about the amount.
Yeah.
I gave them 10 originally.
So how about 15?
15.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because I had given them nothing.
I mean, we can always come down.
Yeah, let's
We
go to
can-
15,000. And then you've got Journey Bees Village.
Can we do 15 on that one too?
I think that was a 0 for me. I can go with
That was a 0 for me. I have a hard time with that one.
It was a 0 for me.
It was a 0 for me.
All right, let's go to 0 then.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. That is that the, I just want to clarify, TT, this is the group that was helping folks,
Ladera Chris, so I'm trying to figure out how y'all
Right.
saying 0
I'm
for
sorry.
them because they
I'm
gave
sorry.
them $15,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. That was,
gonna go to them.
that's right. After TT's comment, that wasn't a 0 for me. That was,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting here dumbfounded for a minute now. Hold on, y'all just gave.
thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was,
After
agree.
TT's comment, I had changed my position to this being an organization I supported. I wasn't sure about 80,000. I recommend 20.
And I said 15.
I
I said
15
0.
also.
I'm good with 20 because they meet all criteria and demographics of everybody.
Support 20 as well.
I'll support 20.
I'll support 20.
I'll support
20. Let's do 20.
And then you've got, I think, one or two up there closer to the top that are a little bit bigger numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got School Health Alliance and we have Mental Health Association.
Is it mental health or CareNet?
I thought it was Karen. I've got to step out of that.
Sorry, CareNet, sorry.
CareNet,
For 75,
Where are
They
we
asked
at?
for 75, the average was 46.5,
How much money do we have left to give?
250.
give them 50. I'd say 50.
I gave them more, so I'll support whatever number everyone wants higher than what this is.
50 in.
Yeah,
And
I
then
wasn't a
you've
big
got
fan
school-
of their application, but I can go with 50.
Yeah. And I think for School Alliance, I would say 50.
which
Yeah.
one is that now?
School
The school
Alliance,
health.
They do imprints and they do the School Health Alliance, which is at Winston-Salem Prep and Ashley.
Could we,
The school closed.
can we do 75 for both of those?
They're still doing, remember, they're still doing imprints for the
Yeah.
children of frontline workers.
So I would say 75.
They've opened up this has been going on for now about a month, that they are taking care of the kids of all of the.
I think 75 is reasonable. My concern was how closely they're tied to the school. I think what they're doing is separate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I looked at my sheet. I gave him $100,000. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Forgive me. I was looking at the wrong name.
I'd say 75.
75.
I support 75.
I can support that.
I support 75
At the
as well.
bottom, if you
Hey,
wouldn't
did we
mind.
say what we gave Mental Health Association?
50.
Mental health is right above CareNet, and that was,
We didn't
we
say.
gave them 17,
Yeah,
22.
Mr. Chair, I
So we
support.
have 100
25.
Yeah, I support 25 for mental health. I strongly
Yeah.
support that.
25. Let's just give them what they want. 25.
Definitely.
Okay, and I've got a suggestion. So if you'll scroll all the way to the top, we have $125,000 left of this. I would suggest that we take the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, organizations, and we fund them at their max request, because they were our 5 highest rated, and some of them are already
Yes.
there.
And they're not far.
Because I was going to
Okay.
ask
That-
you that.
I would agree.
I agree with that.
Yes.
How about top 10?
If we
I'm
have it.
okay with that if we have enough money to do it.
Let's
Let's see
Five and
what
see if
we
we can make it to
have.
the 10.
So
Once we
Christ
give
Rescue
them
would
all.
be 50,
Yeah.
which I know is more than we discussed, but
That's a big deal for that church.
Maybe that'll get us into heaven.
Oh, no.
What are we giving?
we're gonna need the
I'm
good
sorry, what
reverend
are
for
we
that one.
changing now?
The top 5 initially.
Just for the record, folks, we dispensed with indulgences a long time ago, so that's not going to do it, guys. Okay.
Thank you,
This one-
Reverend.
Meredith, thank you for highlighting this. This is one that I do want to discuss. So we took them from the average of 52 down to 45. Since we did that, I'm assuming we don't want to go to 65, 555.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, I think keep them there.
You could go to
Which one are you
50.
talking
That would
about?
put, and the same thing with school health, or I think we leave them at 75 and not go to.
Agreed.
Agree. You don't go anywhere.
So what is our total at the bottom, Meredith?
Ooh.
Well, now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Why not do the school?
$94,000
Why
left.
not do the full school? Health Alliance. I mean, we increased it.
We've got some more money left. We can, okay.
I just think there was some questions about that. Like we could go up on Trellis because they help everybody. And if they're going to be negatively impacted by COVID, you know.
Can we go up to 75 for them?
For Trellis?
Yeah.
I'd like to see that go up.
So what's the balance, Meredith? Can you scroll down just so we see the balance? So we've got about
5, 758.
85.
now, Ben. Do you feel like if there's 85,000 and they open up the applications and we get 10 or 12 more, that's an appropriate thing for us to do?
Can you scroll back to the top?
So, I mean, I think based on, the magnitude of the requests that have come into the fund, I mean, it's 2.3 million on this list. I think if they reopen the portal, I mean, I'm confident there will be more.
Oh, it'll be ridiculous.
Yeah, there will be
I think we
more.
need to spend
So
this
let me
80.
ask you, Ben. So what we were saying, we could have 42 names and only have $85,000.
Right.
I think we should spend what we have, and then if they reopen it, they'll have to raise more money.
I agree with Gail.
Yes.
Meredith,
I agree.
What do
Can I
y'all
give
think
you
about
about
this?
the $10,000?
Let's spend this 85,000 on these applicants.
All right, why don't we do this? Why don't we continue down the list, and for everybody that we have funded, let's fund them at what they've requested.
See where we
Um,
end up.
Well, we stopped at
See where we
Trellis,
are.
so the one below Trellis, Hope Connection.
Yes.
They'll be at 30, and then so forth and so on as you go down the list. There you go, Meredith. 30 for, yeah, Sinai.
Parenting path,
Nah, we're not gonna get there doing it this way. We're gonna spend too much.
Where are we?
You're not going to spend too much. You won't
Where
get
are
there.
we?
Yeah, I need to know where we are.
65,000 left. We're good.
Okay.
How much do we have left?
55.
But not 54,000. I mean, we're starting to go down. But yeah.
how much did we give school help?
I don't know about now. I would not give
We
them.
can't go to 100 on Hope to Thrive.
No, we came down on them.
Yeah. We already went back on them.
I don't think we can go to 80 on Journey Beads either, unless somebody tells me wrong.
No.
No.
Okay, what about CareNet?
What I would do,
What was that, TT?
I opened my mouth and said, I'm not arguing with y'all today. It's 5:11.
So listen, something I want to bring up because it's something I mentioned to Ben offline. It is not unheard of to fund, grant applicants at more than what they requested if their project warrants it. And I think if we were to go back to our top 5 that we have felt so strongly about, those are projects that warrant, in some cases, in my mind, even more funding than they asked for.
Oh, that's nice.
Take this remaining $33,000 and divide it up and just add a bit more to them.
I agree with that. Reverend.
Let me, and I agree with the concept of funding folks for more than they requested. But here's what I would throw out is that there are a few areas where there weren't very many applicants for a particular subject matter. So there weren't very many applicants to deal with mental health. There was only one organization that proposed to deal exclusively with mental health, and that's the Mental Health Association, and they only asked for 25,000. So that's a group that I would both because they are one of the few groups that, or I think the only one at least that I've seen here or in the private applications or that went to the foundation that applied for mental health services. I support an additional 10 or 15,000 for them, just on the strength of knowing the challenges, the mental health challenges that are coming up, and that there just isn't, there aren't many other organizations who are doing it.
Are we allowed to give money to family services even though they're not on our list, but they receive money from the foundation?
No. What about Exchange Club? Can we up that?
I mean, I think if we did, I'd go up to 50.
Well, we can give them their full amount.
I would just go to, I'm just not a big fan. I could do 50, but that's as far as I'd be willing to go.
I mean, you can up it. What's the difference left now?
If you took them to 50 and you took mental, if you took Exchange Club to 50 and you took mental health to what did you say, 60?
Mental health to 35.
30 or either that or 40, right?
Yeah.
So now you're
to be conservative. How many?
You have $18,000 left.
I think we should give another 5 to the diaper bank. I mean, anybody who's ever had kids, those diapers.
But can someone also speak to the other things they do? I know very quickly, just speak to it quickly. I know that they do more.
They do. They have hygiene products, and they also supply diapers for dogs and things like that.
So, and I would just say a little bit differently, and I'm the worst to talk about in terms of my language to talk about this, but for women who need feminine hygiene products, that they provide those as well, and that it's a major and constant need for low-income women that that is hard to provide the financial cover those costs. And in some ways, when they talk about diapers, that's really just the bare start of what they do.
Let's go 10. Let's give them 10 more.
10 for me.
I would fund them. I would fund them as much as anybody wants.
Why not just give them 40? Why not just give them 40 total?
And call it a day.
I agree with the Reverend.
You've got 3,000 left, which you can divvy up in whatever kind of way. Just give them 40,000.
So that's what, 3,000 left?
3,000.
3,430.
Okay, I want the
Backpack
3,000.
program will get food to people. The site backpack program will get food to people, I believe.
So then let's give them the rest.
Hold on, you can't go more than 100.
Can't get more than 100,000.
Just kidding.
So for the other food-based organizations, why don't we take the 3,400 and just split it between the other organizations that are doing food?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Those.
I would agree with that.
Do we know which ones those are?
Well,
faith-based.
that's SG Atkins.
CareNet Counseling. You could add it to CareNet Counseling.
It's Love Out Loud, SG Atkins, and it's I think Nueva.
Viva Vida, New Life.
Yeah, and I think there was one other organization. It's the church, the one where
The one that was doing Bethesda.
Why can't we remember that?
That's Greater Commission who was doing Bethesda.
So let's give it to them.
Which one is the church where the daughter applied and the father was the
Iglesia
pastor?
de Cristo.
Give it to them.
Give it
For being humble.
Give it to them.
Give it to them. Give it to them.
All right, so let's make that 13,430. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Give it to them.
Beautiful.
This is great. Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got to vote on this, and Ben, make sure that I'm doing this correctly. Do we need to vote line by line, or can we vote as? I guess we have to do it line by line because there's some people that have to recuse themselves, don't we?
Well, this would be my suggestion. I think that if you all voted on the ones where you have to, because you'll have to vote to excuse them first before you vote. So I think if I count that correctly, there are 5 organizations that you need to do that. What I would do is I would do individual votes for those, and then I would bundle the remaining and do it as one. I'll still do a roll call vote, but we'll still do it as one vote.
Okay, so if I
That will be the rest of
introduce
the
the
slate.
organization, will you have the roll, Ben, that you can call?
I got it here in front of me.
Well,
All right, so what we'll do, we will vote on the 5 that have people that need to recuse themselves. I'll ask everybody to vote on the person being recused.
All right, no need to do.
Vote on and
Need to do those individually.
right. So I have to vote to recuse the person and then vote on the organization amount.
That's correct.
Okay.
Ben, do we have to actually name those individually? We can't just do a blanket motion to recuse those individuals and then vote on all 5 at one time?
I mean, for example, if we recuse Mabel, everybody, then Melissa can't, vote. I mean, none of the 5 could vote on these agencies.
Okay.
but
Yeah. So let's just do it one at a time.
On the ones that they have.
but can't we take a vote and the records show that we recuse from those without having to do two separate?
Well, we can just do it. It won't take long.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
You just got 5.
I don't. Do we need a motion and a second for the recusal? No, I wouldn't think so.
I don't think so. I just do the vote, and here again, we'll run through this as a roll call just to be completely transparent.
The first vote will be to recuse Mabel from voting on Grace Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
So
So Mr. Dunnigan,
Approve.
Mrs. Anderson,
Approve.
Ms. Diggs,
Approve.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan, Ms. Rodriguez,
Approve.
Vickers,
Approve.
Mr. Perry,
approve.
Ms. Harmon,
Approve.
Mr. McCann.
Approve.
Okay, so that's the vote to recuse Ms. Stevenson.
Okay, so the second vote, what I'd like to do, let's now vote to approve an amount of $45,320 for Grace Presbyterian Church.
We need a motion and a second on that one.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, Who did the motion?
Anderson moves.
Daisy did the second.
Okay. Okay, all right, so ready for the vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Approve.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan, Ms. Rodriguez,
Approve.
Ms. Vickers,
Approve.
Mr. Perry,
Approved.
Harmon,
Approved.
Mr. McCann.
Approved.
Okay.
Okay, so the next vote will be to recuse Melissa from voting on Love Out Loud.
Okay. Here, love that. All right, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Aye.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez, Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers. No, excuse me, sorry. Mr. Perry,
Approved.
Ms. Carmen,
Approved.
Mr. McCann.
Approved.
Okay.
Okay, the next vote will be to approve $75,000 in funding for Love Out Loud. We need a
Make the
motion. and a
motion
second.
that we approve 75,000 for Love Out
I
Loud.
second it.
Reverend Ford.
Okay, Ford and Mr. Heelan. Okay, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Approved.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye. Approved.
Harmon,
Approved.
Mr. McCann.
Approved.
Okay, the next vote will be to recuse Daisy from voting on CareNet counseling.
Okay, Karen, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Aye.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Approved.
Ms. Harmon,
Approved.
Mr. McCann.
Okay, the next vote will be to approve funding of $50,000 for CareNet counseling. Need a
Make a
motion
motion to approve the $50,000.
I second it.
Okay, is that a motion by Ms. Diggs and a second?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Approved.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Approved.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Is that me?
yes,
Approved.
Mr. Perry,
Approved.
Ms. Parman,
Approved.
Mr. McCann.
Approved.
Okay,
The next vote will be to recuse Corey from voting on Hope to Thrive.
let's see here. Hope to Thrive. I'm just trying to find on my sheet here. Okay, Hope to Thrive. Okay. Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Aye.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Approved.
Ms. Parman,
Approved.
I'd like to place it to order.
Nice.
All right.
Okay, so the next vote will be to approve funding $50,000 for Hope to Thrive. Need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion. Daisy.
I second Brenda Diggs.
Okay. Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Approved.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Approved.
Ms. Harmon.
Approved.
Okay.
The next vote will be to recuse Brenda from voting on the Winston-Salem Industries for the Blind.
Okay, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson, Reverend Ford, Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Approve.
Ms. Parman,
Approve.
McCann.
Approved.
Okay, and the next vote will be zero funding for the Winston-Salem Industries for the Blind. Need a motion in a second.
So moved, Gail Anderson.
I'll second Daisy Rodriguez.
Okay, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Harmon, and Mr. McCann.
Approved.
Okay, and the last vote of today will be to approve the remaining slate of funding recommendations.
I think we need to do one for Share Winston-Salem.
Oh, we do? Did I miss one?
Reverend Ford.
Yes, you do. He's my member. Gary Williams is my member.
Okay. The next vote will be to recuse
Reverend Ford.
Reverend Ford.
sorry, Reverend Ford. I'm sorry. From voting on Share Winston-Salem, Inc.
Okay, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Approve.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Ms. Parman,
Approve.
Mr. McCann.
Approved.
Next vote will be for zero funding for Share Winston-Salem, Inc. Need a motion in a second.
So moved. Brenda Diggs.
I second T.T. Parman.
Stevenson.
We'll have T.T. Parman as the second on that. Okay, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs, Mr. Heelan,
Approved.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Ms. Parman,
I approve.
Mr. McCann.
Approved.
Okay,
Okay, so the last vote of today is to approve the remaining slate of funding recommendations. That's everything on this list except for Grace Presbyterian Church, Love Out Loud, CareNet, Hope to Thrive, Winston-Salem Industries for the Blind, and Share Winston-Salem. Need a motion in a second.
I make that motion.
Second Daisy.
so Brian Heelan and Mr. Heelan and Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Roll call here, Mr. Dunnigan,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Diggs,
Approved.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Heelan,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson,
Aye.
Ms. Vickers,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Ms. Parman,
Aye.
Mr. McCann.
Okay, well, guys, thank you so much for all of your time this afternoon. We appreciate your service to the city. Ben, Meredith, thank you for putting all this together and making it as easy and simple as you did. I really appreciate all your work on that.
Thank you all.
question?
Stay safe and healthy.
Could you send us a copy of what of the awards?
Yes, well, I'll send you all a spreadsheet that shows the final award amount. Yes, absolutely.
And the press release will come out what, Wednesday?
Probably going to look to try to do that Monday.
Okay.
And the funds will be dispersed next week?
In
Well,
May.
so
May.
the next steps, the agencies are going to have to sign off on the city's form of agreement, which has the report requirements, the restrictions, all that. So, allowing for a few days. My hope is that potentially as early as the end of next week, but it might be more that first week in May. We'll just kind of see how quickly they can turn around getting all the signed agreements back to us, because they sign first, and then our city attorney and our chief financial officer have to do their due diligence review.
But you'll send us a copy of the press release.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'll probably work on coming up with just the simple list this evening, because I know that the city manager wants me to share that with council and do that. And I'll just go ahead and send that to you all, and then probably start working over the weekend on communicating the decisions to all 42 agencies.
Thank you very
So
much.
then,
Enjoy
Quick
this
question.
process.
Thank you
Quick
all.
question.
Great.
Thank you.
We
Take care,
stand adjourned.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Safe.
Thank y'all. Take care.
You're still there.